Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. That's right. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. Happy to be here with you today. We are live in New York City, talking to you on No Soundbites Allowed. Now, if this is the first time that you're joining us for our Sunday live stream that starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we want to welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary. We talk about the issues that are affecting us all across the world, and with emphasis, of course, on the United States and how it affects us. These are important conversations that we get to have with all of you, and we thank you, each and every one, for being part of our audience every Sunday. So we've got a few things to talk about here today. I apologize. I was just talking with my sister, and of course, that took up a little bit of my time, so we came right onto the show. But we are ready. Now, I do need to let everyone know just ahead of time that please, I know you'll see the phone number coming across the screen, 607-242-9247. At the moment, our phone lines are down until we can turn them back on. We won't be able to take calls, but just like you can see Graham, right now, we are able to take your tweets, your chats, and whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or D-Live and a few others, we can still get that information. Thank you for being with us here today, Graham, being the first one. You know, there should be a competition with Graham to see who can be first to comment on the show. But let's start off today. We're going to start off with something real easy. We're going to go into the politics. Thank you. We're just going to start off with, we're going to start off with what's happening internationally. There's been a lot happening. We are getting ready for not World War III. We've said this on the program for a couple years now. It's not that we're expecting World War III. It's that we're expecting 3 regional wars, and we're getting closer and closer to that. Of course, we have the Ukraine and Russia, where we are seeing this is a 2 decades long war. We're in the middle of that 2 decades fight. Very much like Afghanistan, very much like what we see in Vietnam. It's not going to end anytime soon. We've seen that there are drone strikes by the Ukrainians into the heart of Russia. We see Russia has responded. This is going back and forth, and as much as we are sending over tanks, we're about to send over fighter planes, it's not going to end anytime soon. Given that, what's happening in the rest of the world? What's happening in China? What's happening in Southeast Asia? What's happening in the Middle East? A lot is happening, and it's not being emphasized because everyone today is talking about Trump. They want you to focus on Trump. He just got indicted again. There's going to be another trial for President Trump again. They want him off of the 2024 ticket for the election again. We know that. That's not new. That's why no one cares about that story. It's not red meat, even for progressives, even for Democrats. It's not a news story because we know he's going to be indicted between now and January. As we said earlier this year, he's going to be indicted again. It doesn't matter what the charges are. It doesn't matter what the case is. They're just going to keep doing this to try and stop him from being on the ballot. But what are the news stories that we're not being told about? What are the issues that they are avoiding, distracting us from by talking about yet another indictment against President Trump? Again, it doesn't matter if you like him or dislike him. That's just a distraction. That's not the most important issue facing America. At least that's what we believe on the channel right now. By the way, folks, tell me if you can hear me fine, if there's anything with the volume. We tried to tweak it so it should be better, and you can hear us better, and you should be able to see us better than last week's show. So let's talk about what's happening in the rest of the world. What's happening across the landscape here. And one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is we're going to start off something really simple. What's happening in England? What's happening in the United Kingdom right now? Because this is kind of a microcosm of what we're seeing here in the United States. There is a backlash. See, what we're seeing right now is they have throughout southern England, the United Kingdom, they have the cameras, speed cams, car cams. They're recording everyone who's traveling into and out of various cities. They're giving them tickets for speeding or running red lights. And as a result of that, we're seeing a new movement, a movement that's called, they call themselves Blade Runners. And what are these Blade Runners doing? They're taking down these cameras, this government intrusion into privacy that they're, and again, this is all about money, this is about control. The United Kingdom, they're trying to control people at every step of the day. This is a nation that has CCTV everywhere. They have cameras everywhere to watch every single person with facial recognition software, tracking you in everything that you do. Why? Because they don't have a constitution. They don't have the amendments. They don't have a First Amendment right to freedom. They don't have that. And so the government is imposing itself on their lives constantly. And now we're seeing a backlash that is affecting everyone, where they're saying they're going to cut down some of these CCTV cameras. They're saying that they need to reject this. Now, the reason why I find this to be important and of interest, and thank you, Graham, for confirming that you can hear me all right. The volume's fine. One of the reasons why I find this to be so important is the fact that this is yet another example of the backlash that is happening, that we are seeing a movement in Europe and here in the United States away from the progressive, uniparty, absolute control, government micromanaging people's lives from cradle to grave. That's changing. Even in Europe, which is further to the left than most of the United States outside of colleges, we're seeing that there is that backlash, that movement towards conservatism, that movement towards freedom, individual freedom, without government oversight, without government control of everything you're doing at every point and moment in their life. Now, you may agree with that. I know why they're saying in the United Kingdom, they're doing it because they need to make sure the roads are safe and to get more taxes. But it's really about control. It's not, they're not making enough money off of this in the United Kingdom to say that this is some kind of windfall of money. It's not paying for all the spending that's going on in the United Kingdom, in London. It's not enough. No, this is about control. And people recognize that. The Blade Runners in the United Kingdom recognize that, and they're saying enough is enough. Rishi Sunak should be paying attention. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak should be paying attention to this and realize and recognize that he needs to step up. It's not enough to have empty promises like his immigration promises to stop illegal immigration into the United Kingdom. He needs to actually do something because the people are starting to react. And that means he's losing control. Not just the conservatives, the Tories, but we're seeing the labor as well. We're seeing people rise up. It's kind of like what we're seeing in Italy. And we're going to talk about Italy in a second. John is here with us as well. And John says, Mike, I'm tuning in from stepping out of the Barbie movie. The Barbie movie is a crime against humanity. Well, John, I did warn you that the Barbie movie is woke. It's anti-men. It's not even pro-women. Based on everything we've seen about it, it's a bad movie. But again, that's another form of the government and progressives trying to micromanage people's lives. The Barbie movie isn't targeted towards John or myself, 30-year-olds, 50-year-olds. It's targeted towards 12-year-olds. It's trying to tell young women that they should be more like men, that there should be less respect between the sexes and the genders. It's again a means of control. Be more progressive, be more socialist, and your life will be perfect, except it never is. And we're seeing a lot of this. John says, I love my girlfriend. That's why I'm watching this cinema abomination. Well, you know, that's why a lot of men have gone to see it. In fact, I think that's about the only reason why there's a male audience at the Barbie movie. It's men who are either dads or their husbands or boyfriends that are being drugged to this. It's not a good movie. It doesn't have a positive message. But hey, you know what? I'm glad that you decided to bite the bullet and go with your girlfriend because she wanted to see it. I hope she finds some value in it. I doubt that she will, but we'll find out. But besides the Barbie movie, and you can call, John goes on to say the Barbie movie is not appropriate for small children. No, it isn't. But that's who it's targeting. It's meant to program them. And we'll go on to talk about the CRT. We'll be going on into how we're seeing children in education are being programmed not to critically think, but to just obey, to follow a political doctrine. And again, this is what we're seeing being fought against over in the United Kingdom. That's what they're fighting against right now. The indoctrination, the micromanagement. And if there's anyone who disagrees with me, just type in today and send me your message and say, Mike, I think you're wrong. The CCTV, the constant surveillance by the government in Europe and in the United States, that's for your best interest. That's going to help you somehow. How? How is it going to help you? Because it's not preventing crime. It may react after a crime. That's what it's there for. It reacts after a crime is committed. So if someone ran a red light, if someone got carjacked, they're going to be able to react after the fact, not ahead of time. It's not protecting you. They'll tell you it's to protect you. It's not protecting you. It's reacting after the fact. And the criminals aren't afraid of being punished. We can wear masks nowadays. No one thinks twice about that. They're not being punished by this. The public is being punished by this over and over again. And I think it's kind of important because while we're focused on that, while we are seeing this reaction, there's other things that are happening. You know what you didn't hear about? And I know most Americans don't really pay attention to this, is we're seeing that tensions are growing in Poland. As we speak, Poland is sending over troops to the border of Belarus, getting prepared because they believe that Russia will be expanding its war, that the Wagner Group may be either unilaterally or under the guidance of Putin, they're going to be going into Poland and possibly Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, that they're going to be expanding their influence, which is scary because we know that the Wagner Group will act on its own in its best interest, that its various factions within the Wagner Group, a mercenary company, they have divisions within them that are willing to take actions regardless of what the leadership says, regardless of what Putin says. Again, I'm not trying to stand up for Putin. I want to see him lose. I do not trust that man. I've lived in the Soviet Union. I understand how many of these former KGB operatives think. I don't trust him, and I have a problem with him. But I also don't trust the Wagner Group. I don't trust the Ukraine government. All of them are corrupt. Every single one. And in that corruption lies the ability of expanding the war. That what's happening in the Ukraine right now isn't just limited to the Ukraine, as we see from Poland. And that's why Poland is reacting, because they know. They've been through this before. They have fought for their freedom before. They understand the threat that they are under. And when people tell you, like throughout all of Europe, the EU, that there are open borders, you have to have open borders, Poland is saying, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. Remember, it was just last year, last summer and last winter, that Poland was defending its borders, building up walls to protect themselves from refugees. Imagine if they had followed the EU, which told them, you have to take down your walls, you have to open up your border, because borders don't exist. You have to let refugees and anybody enter Poland. And if they did that, if Poland had backed down and listened to the EU, they allowed the EU and the WEC, the WEF, to control Poland's politics. If they were listening to the UN, they would no longer have their nation. The Wagner Group and military from Belarus would have walked into Poland and taken it over. They'd be fighting right now, not just in Ukraine, but in Poland too. Probably Lithuania and Estonia as well. Why? Because you can't have micromanagement. It's corrupting. It always leads to a negative outcome. Again, if you think I am wrong about this, I am happy to hear this, but I want you to understand, we are not in a vacuum in the United States. What happens here is affecting everyone around the world. And what is most important is the United States is the mainstream media are trying to hide the important things that are happening. We need a president in 2024. We need a president right now in 2023 that understands international politics, that is able to be a leader to assert themselves and to calm down the rest of the world. We are seeing Western Europe escalate and become not just more militarized, but we're seeing the threat of nuclear weapons. We're seeing the threat of invasion of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. We are seeing the expansion of war because the United States isn't strong enough under the Biden-Harris administration to stop Putin, to give him a valid threat. And that's going to continue. And if you think that's not important to your life as an American or for anyone around the world who's watching this, you haven't understood that we're all involved. It's going to be your kids, your moms, your dads, your uncles, your nieces that are going to be fighting in this war. Because war is coming. Poland recognizes that. Poland is defending its borders. They're not doing the open border, let everyone in, because it isn't a human right. Borders do exist. Walls do work. And they're protecting themselves. As opposed to what we're seeing here in the United States. As we just found out, and we covered this week, we just had Secretary Mayorkas, who was just at Congress speaking to the House and admitted that he has no idea where 140 terrorists, individuals on the terrorist watch list, international terrorist watch list, 140 of these terrorists, supposed terrorists, have entered the United States in 2023 alone. As we reported earlier, that is a 46 times, not percent, a 46 times increase in the number of known and suspected terrorists in America since 2020. That is an increase of 43% versus 2022, when 98 known terrorists entered the United States because of open borders. Think about that. That's 140 potential 9/11s happening across America. That is 140 Colorado shooters. That is 140 Orlando shooters. That is 140 Fort Hood or San Bernardino shooters all across America. And that's assuming if they use guns. We're not talking about car attacks like we saw in Manhattan in 2017, like we saw in Las Vegas in 2017, like we saw in Waukesha in 2022, where a guy just drove through a parade. The threat is real. Dow saying his phone the phone app is having a trouble connecting. Of course, because I'm talking about restricting the power of government, both in the United States and overseas, because it is important. Because the policies we have been told that are going to protect us, that are absolutely necessary, are detrimental. We are seeing it real time. If you've been told, well, borders don't exist, well, think about it. What happened with that? Kamala did not do her job. Kamala Harris failed the American people. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have adopted the UN's idea of open borders. And 140 terrorists are running around the United States right now. And according to Secretary Mayorkas, we have no idea where they are. We do not know where 140 possible 9/11s are at this moment. That should terrify people. But the news media is more than happy to tell you about the Barbie movie. They want you to know the Barbie movie has now crossed and made $1 billion. They're telling you that progressivism has worked, that demonizing men and elevating women artificially by demonizing men, by making men dumb, that insult, that gender inequality, that bias and prejudice, they want you to know that that's doing well, but they don't want you to think about the consequences of having a government micromanage your everyday life, while at the same time endangering your life by having open borders. They don't want to talk about that. Dow says that Barbie movie is supposedly so cringe and bad that it accidentally made itself based if you follow the message from Ken's perspective. I agree with you, but that's only because the message is flawed. The message coming from the progressive wing that is meant to indoctrinate children is flawed. It is flawed because it doesn't work. It doesn't work because, look at open borders. It doesn't work. We're seeing this in the United Kingdom. We're seeing this throughout the EU. We are seeing this in the United States. People's lives are endangered, and they are getting worse because we are allowing criminals to enter our nation and to endanger us, and radicals like terrorists are entering at the same time. Because when you have an open door, anyone can walk through. Not just good people, bad people too. People with bad intentions. People who are human smugglers that are doing human trafficking. They get to walk across that open border just like everyone else. Oh, that's the unintended consequence. That's the part that the news media doesn't want to talk to you about. They don't want to tell you that, oh yeah, we're letting in terrorists because of an open border. We're letting in sex slavers and human traffickers because open border. They don't want you to think about these things. They'd rather tell you, just focus on the Barbie movie. They don't want you to realize that this is endangering people in Poland as we speak. And so Poland is militarizing, and they're looking to protect their people because they don't agree about these open borders. And when I said that we're talking about human trafficking, I want to be very clear. We're talking about the 500, just another group, another caravan that is in Mexico. And there are some 200 plus children in this caravan that are being smuggled into the United States. At least 56 of them are unaccompanied children. This is news from today. It just came out today that the Mexican government was able to find us 52 of the children. Some 277 children were in this group of 491 aliens that are migrating into America, that are being stashed across Mexico by the cartels, the human traffickers. And in that human trafficking, there are at least 52 children who are completely on their own. That's child abuse. This is what open borders gets you. Open borders allows human traffickers, child traffickers, slavery to exist. 52 children that were sent, child abuse, that's child abuse, sent on a 1,000, 2,000 mile walk by themselves to come into the United States, captured by cartels and being used as drug mules and sex slaves. And we see this. This is the news. It's coming from Mexico. The migrants were being held in a walled compound outside the city of Puebla, along a popular smuggling route. Mexico knows this is how humans are trafficked, drugs are trafficked into the United States because of the open border that Kamala Harris, who is supposed to be closing the border, who's supposed to be ending illegal immigration, Kamala Harris has failed. Joe Biden has failed. The progressive policy has failed. And along with these children, these 52 children who are endangered and may be smuggled, human trafficking, that's what they're saying here. They're smuggling drugs and people. It's in the news. This is being reported by the country of Mexico. They know what's about to happen. The Biden-Harris administration knows what's going to happen. Democrats and progressives know what's going to happen. The UN and Europe know what's going to happen. They want you to talk about the Barbie movie instead. They don't want you to read this news. They don't want you to think about this news. You're supposed to just ignore it. It's not important. That's what they keep telling you. Dow says, foreign saboteurs, the Chinese Communist Party, PLA, coming in, weaponized drugs, or shipping in weaponized drugs for chemical warfare and slaves all through our southern border, because the border is open. We should be paying attention to Poland. The United Kingdom should be paying attention to Poland and recognizing that open borders don't work. Just allowing illegal aliens to just enter your nation over and over again, putting them up in hotels, spending twice as much on each illegal alien as opposed to the average American citizen, is not going to stop illegal immigration. It does not stop child trafficking or sex trafficking. It doesn't stop drugs, and it doesn't stop terrorists. News media is not going to talk to you about this. You're not going to see this discussion on CNN or MSNBC or ABC or the New York Times. They don't want to talk about the consequences. They're telling you to obey. They tell you, no, it's a good thing. We need open borders. Why? We need to allow terrorists to enter America. Why? We need to have human trafficking in America, child trafficking in America. Why? We need that in Europe too. Why? They never answer the question, why? They tell you, don't ask questions. You're the bad guy. How dare you? You're evil. You just want kids in a cage. No, they're already in a cage. I don't want kids in a cage. They're already in cages, as we can see in Mexico. They're already being tracked. They're already slaves. I just don't want that in America. They tell you, we're the bad guys for having this conversation, a conversation that is changing lives in America and around the world, and the major news media saying, no, you're the bad guy, stop talking about that. Don't make people think about that. Don't have that conversation internationally or in the United States. You're the bad guy. Why? Because the leaders, the progressives and Democrats that are in charge don't have a plan because they have failed, demonstrably failed. There is no one, I don't care how much of a Democrat or progressive you may happen to be, you cannot tell me that Kamala Harris has done a good job at the one job she has, the job she was given March of 2021. That's her only job, and she has failed. And I only need to look at Mexico and 52 children out of the 277, 52 children who are being abused as they are sent by themselves to travel 1,000, maybe 2,000 miles on foot to enter America, and they have been captured and are being used by cartels to either have sex slaves or drug mules. And I'm the bad guy. You're the bad guy for hearing about this. I'm the bad guy for mentioning we should be talking about this, that the policies don't make sense. But it doesn't stop there, quite honestly. Because just like what we see in Poland, we're seeing Italy is also doing its very best to try and stop this. Italy elected a conservative, which according to Europe means that they're the far right. They're as evil could be. It might as well be Donald Trump. It is horrible nationalism because they elected someone who's a conservative, someone who doesn't believe that the UN controls all of human rights. Because they elected a conservative, the nation of Italy elected a conservative, rejecting the UN, rejecting the EU, rejecting progressives. Because they did that, because these conservatives, Meloni, who is the Prime Minister Meloni, because she has looked at what China has been doing and that China has used and abused Italy, now she's being punished. Not just by the EU, not just by progressives, but by the very Chinese government that made the deal with Italy before she got in power. If you go through this story, which is coming from, this is from scmp.com, the news out today, quote, "You don't get anything by signing up to the Belt and Road, the Chinese communist infrastructure deal in Europe. It's a gesture of goodwill that may or may not make Beijing, the Chinese communists, more likely to reward you. It's a necessary step in the right direction if you're looking to get closer to China and find funding for infrastructure projects, but it's not anything like a deal or a treaty," says Jacob Mardell, an analyst of the EU-China relations based in Berlin. They're telling you. China said, make a deal with us. China said, let us in. Because you have open borders, because you're trying to be more socialist, because they're communists. And they say, open your doors, let us in, and maybe if you're really good socialists, we might give you a bone. And Italy looked at this and said, the deal doesn't make any sense. We're gaining nothing. China gains everything. China is gaining more power. And we know this because, remember, it was just a month and a half ago, that we had President Macron of France say that Europe needs to abandon the United States and accept China. That's the same message that Italy was saying under the progressives, that they have to abandon America and join up with the Chinese. China has been making steps over and over again. They have been setting this up. China is aligned with Russia. Russia's fighting on the Western European front. China's making deals with Europe, trying to sway them. This is to the benefit of Russia, not the United States, not Europe. They're helping China in these deals that they're trying to make with France. In the deal they made with Italy, it helps Russia. It doesn't help anyone else. It's helping China. It's helping Russia. But we're not supposed to talk about this. We're supposed to say open borders, it's perfectly fine. Communism, it's really great. That's what you're supposed to say. And God forbid that you bring up the fact that China is abusing nations. They did it to Africa. They're in the middle of doing it to South America, and they're doing it to Europe. And we're being told that's a great thing. That's good news. I don't think it is. This is why we're seeing where are all those missiles coming from? Where is Russia getting the money to continue to fight? Where are their resources coming from? China. China is the manufacturing hub of the world. Used to be the United States. And then Obama decided to transform America from a manufacturing economy into a service economy, and China became the world's manufacturing center. And they used that to leverage and get their influence into Africa. So every green device you want to think of, the wind, the solar, the batteries, the electric cars, that's all money going to China. That is all controlled by China. They're going into South America, buying up all the resources down there to deny it for the United States, to deny the European Union. Because if you're not doing what China wants, like the Belt and Road idea, then you get punished. And that's what's happening right now. Italy is being punished. They're being punished twice. The EU is beating up on Italy because they're conservatives and they're not doing what China wants. And they're getting punished by China because they're not doing what China wants. But this is what the Italian people want. This is the best thing for China, just like not listening to the UN is the best thing for Poland. Folks, you don't have to agree with me, but please understand the argument and the fact that we need to have these conversations, especially if you don't recognize that I'm right. If you say, Mike, I think there's a different conclusion, fantastic. We need to have this conversation before wars continue to spill over, before we reach the point of no return. By the way, Bellin, it's good to see you here with us. Thank you for joining us today. I love you too. So, again, folks, I'm asking you to think about this because we are being shown the examples, and I'm just pointing out what's happening in Europe, what's happening with Poland, what's happening with the United Kingdom, how that's influencing and affecting the United States. How these open borders, these policies that we've been told are absolutely beneficial, do not help anyone. And who is at the root of these policies? China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, cartels, people who do not believe in freedom. They believe in power for themselves. That's who we are supporting when we support these progressive ideologies. If you disagree, I'm looking forward to the comment. I want to have that conversation with you. Because it gets even worse, folks. It gets even worse. Where is it? Bear with me a second here. I have it. The studio's a little different, so I have to look different ways. Maybe, now I'm talking about what's happening in Europe. And I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to consider this for a second. That we are seeing Europe go absolutely ballistic. And the bad guys at the end of the day are China and Russia. China is trying to take over Europe. They are trying to convince Europe that they have to trade more and only, not with the United States, but just with China. My biggest problem with this is also the problem that America has. If China is making everything for you, everything from dog food over to steel beams and all your electronics, if they're making all of the goods you use, and they make about 40% of all the goods around the world, what happens when they decide that they're going to stop? See, if tomorrow China decided to go into Taiwan, all they have to do is shut down any manufacturing for the United States or for Europe. In fact, they don't even need to shut down. They just need to cut in half the number of things they're going to make for America. From food to clothing to electronics, they just cut it all in half. And they do that to Europe as well. They will starve out the rest of the world as they go and fight in Taiwan. And what are we going to do? The United States doesn't manufacture. In the past, Europe could rely on the fact that, well, if China doesn't want to make it, if Southeast Asia doesn't want to make it, America makes it. So they don't care. Well, they don't get that option anymore. America doesn't make it anymore. America buys it from China just like they do, driving up the prices because we're competing with people in Germany, in France, in Italy, in the United Kingdom to buy all the things that China is making. Competition brings the price up, not down. Excuse me, not competition, exclusion. The fact that there is no competition for China means that we're paying more for cheaper goods, and they're the only ones making it. And they can turn off the spigot just like Russia turned off the gas, the natural gas, to Germany. Germany was being too uppity. They were too involved in the war in the Ukraine, so Russia turned off the energy in the middle of the winter. That's what happened. And it worked. It was effective. It shut down Germany. This is what happens when you take control of your government from the people and put it in charge of a couple of political elites who are ideologues that have extreme ideologies that do not match what the public need. The drive to become more progressive, more socialist, more communist is not helping anyone. And we have already identified on the show so far today, in the first, what is this? This has been about 40 minutes that we've been talking, and we've already identified how this is hurting us in terms of illegal immigration, in terms of human trafficking, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of safety long term. CNN won't have this conversation with you. They want you to pay attention for a minute and a half. They want you to read a headline, and they're done. MSNBC wants to tell you how you should feel without ever dealing with what are you dealing with, without ever addressing the actual root problem. The New York Times is busy trying to protect Joe Biden, to protect Kamala Harris for the 2024 election, because they need to, remember what they said in 2020? They need to fortify the election. These are the same people who fortified the 2020 election. You saw the Newsweek article like I did. You may have forgot about it. I didn't. These are the same people who fortified an election because they wanted a specific outcome, whether you liked it or not. Meanwhile, they're not addressing the things that are affecting you. As we get closer to the second regional war in the world, which we believe starts in late 2027 or 2028. And I have yet to see any data. I have yet to hear an argument that tells me that I'm wrong. And we've been covering this for more than a year now, trying to make you aware. Just like we've spent more than a year talking about the food crisis, the global food crisis, where there is 30% less food in the world today. Food prices are going up right now. Russia shut down the grain, shut down the fertilizer, which means that in 2024, there will be less food that will be planted, less food that will be grown, less food will be in stores for you to eat. The longer that Russia holds that back, the more people that are going to starve around the world. That is a fact. And we're being told, it's okay. Don't think about it. You have yet to hear a single politician come out and tell you what we have been saying since February of 2022. Prepare. Buy 10% more food. Don't panic. Prepare. Buy 10% more food. Buy more flour, more rice, more grain, more canned foods, preserved food, so that you will be prepared. And if you have been listening to this program since February of 2022, you have saved money. You have extra food right now. Whether you want to give it away to a food pantry, you want to give it to the homeless, you want to give it to veterans, you want to donate it to Haiti or somewhere else in the world, you have that option today. You saved money and you have extra food. Not because you panicked, but because you took precautions as the global food crisis got worse. Because we had a conversation and you made a decision on your own. You weren't compelled to do so. I didn't force you to do it. I didn't take your money away from you so that I could buy the food for you and tell you how much you're going to have. You did it on your own. And I know there are people in this audience that were able to take advantage of that. I know people in this audience, I've met them, I've talked to them, that have done this and saved money and have food, extra food, at this moment. And they're prepared as the food crisis continues. And I know a lot of people in the United Kingdom and Europe and America are going to say, yeah, but I'm not going to starve. What are you talking about, Mike? What is it the young kids say now? But I can just go to the store and buy a loaf of bread. Yeah, okay. Forgetting that the education system has completely failed these children, let's look at it realistically. Yeah, there's food because America's the first world nation, and we're not going to instantly go and become Sri Lanka and have food riots. But we have food deserts all across America. We have people who are not able to eat nutritiously on a regular basis. We do have in virtually every single store you walk into across America, 10, 15, 20% of the shelves are empty at any given moment. Right now, if you went to the store, you'll see 10, 15, 20, maybe even 25% of the shelves are empty at any given moment of some type of food item. That's because of the global food crisis. That's because we don't have enough food in the world. And no one is telling you to prepare. They're telling you, don't think about it. They told you, well, just buy something else. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. Our leaders are working on this. Our leaders are the reason why you aren't prepared. Our leaders are the reason why you can't get your favorite brand or favorite type of food. And our leaders are the reason why people in Sri Lanka and Peru and in Angola are starving as we speak. But no one wants to be honest about that. No one wants to have that conversation with you. Just me. You know, this small channel that's willing to stand up and take the slings and arrows and censorship and suppression from all the social media, because I'm trying to give you the evidence, and I am showing you the evidence week after week, month after month. We've been doing this live stream for 5 years, 6 years almost now, that we have been doing this, talking with you. And I lose money. I just lost my house. I have no money. But I'm doing this with you every week because it's important. Because I want you to be prepared. So that when China in 2027 decides to slow down the manufacturing so that America doesn't have everything it needs, so that people will panic in America and be terrified and go out and they'll be going into the stores trying to buy all the tissue paper all at once because there's not enough bread, as we saw happen in 2020. When China's doing that to cause chaos here because they want to take over Taiwan, possibly go and fight Japan, to fight South Korea, that distraction, you could either be prepared for it or you could be part of the wave of people who are in shock and terrified. These are the choices. CNN is more than happy to leave you terrified because CNN doesn't care. Hollywood doesn't care. They've got their money. They've got their connections. They've got their stockpiles. They don't care. They have their walled condos and houses. Think about it. Members of Congress, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, AOC, Ilhan Omar, they all have private security. They all lived in gated communities, if not walled off houses. They have stockpiles of food. They're not worried about whether or not you starve because they're not going to starve. They don't care. They just want you to obey. I truly believe that. And that's what all the information that we can see is telling us. That is consistently what we are seeing. It's really upsetting. So I'm trying to give you an understanding of what's happening in Europe right now, what's happening in Southeast Asia, what's happening around the world. We already know that North Korea has fired another 25 missiles and rockets and ICBMs in 2023 so far. They fired off 100 in 2022. They're not stopping. They're a threat. They're threatening Japan. They're threatening South Korea. They're threatening the United States. China is trying to take over. They're trying to control. We just saw it in the article. They're trying to control the infrastructure of Europe. France is begging. Macron, the president of France, is begging to China to give them the money so that France can build its infrastructure. Rather than relying on France and maybe their neighbors in Germany and Italy, rather than going to Italy and saying, well, even though you're conservatives, can you help us build our infrastructure? No, they're going to the Communist Party. Why? Because they're socialists, because they're progressive. And now China has control or more influence on the French infrastructure. Who's that helping? Is that helping France? Or is that helping China? We need to have these conversations, folks. This is important. This is really important. And the news media doesn't want you to think about this. News media doesn't want you to talk about this. The news media doesn't want you to think. They just want you to obey. So do the politicians. All right, so I've talked about, we always like to start the program talking about Europe. Talking about what's happening in, well, not just Europe, but the rest of the world, and how does that influence the United States, and how is the United States influencing them? And that's just what we're seeing right now with what's happening to Italy. Italy's trying to be friends with America because China is throwing them under a bus. Meanwhile, China is trying to set up France for the same kind of steamroll control. And France is saying, yes, 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 please do. Macron is not helping you. Rishi Sunak, you should be paying attention to this. The United Kingdom should be paying attention to this. Read the tea leaves because they're smacking you in your face. Poland is telling you how much you have to secure your borders. The threat is real. Italy is telling you what happens when you rely on the Chinese government for infrastructure. You don't get it. They don't want you to be stronger. They want you to fail. They want you to be weak. They want you to be infiltrated so that your government is in chaos. And if I am right, in 2027 or 2028, they're going to use that weakness in Europe, in the United States, to start the second regional war in Southeast Asia. And I would imagine that Iran will be going and starting their conflict immediately afterwards. Vic is on with us. And hello, Vic. Thank you for joining us off of Facebook. And Vic says, meanwhile, Joe Taxpayer goes to work happy in a world of crap because of a roof over their head, a car in the driveway. I will gladly follow a leader who steps up and revolts against the war on America. Well, we need people to fight this war on America, because as America falls, so does the rest of the world. Again, we're the only beacon of freedom in the world. I understand we have allies, and there are people in Canada and Australia and New Zealand, over in Peru and India. in the United Kingdom, yes, there are people who believe in freedom in the world. But the only nation in the world that is a beacon of freedom is the United States. And that is fading. We are losing our strength. We are losing our position in the world. And there is no one in the world to replace us. You're very true, Vic. We need to follow leaders that believe in individual freedom, that believe in individuals and their control over the government, not the opposite. I agree with you. We need to have that kind of respect from our political leaders, not obedience to those political leaders. That's in the United States, that's around the world. And if the United States is doing exactly what we have seen fail in Europe, well, then how can we expect people to get more free? It's not going to happen. There is no one no one else in the world stands up for the First Amendment, the right to free speech. If the United States isn't celebrating free speech and pushing that forward, no one else in the world will do it. Because every other nation in the world, I don't care how well aligned and how much of an ally they are for the United States, if the United States is not standing up for freedom of speech, no country in the world does it. There is no other country that will do it. You're not seeing that with Trudeau in Canada. You're not seeing that with Macron in France. You're not seeing that in Germany, Italy. You're not seeing it anywhere in the world. It all comes from the United States. And right now it's failing. It's failing. Look at the illegal immigration. Look at the number of terrorists in America running amok right now. Honestly, folks, I truly believe if there should be any story that's the leading story in America right now, it is the fact that Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, speaking to Congress in a congressional hearing, said he doesn't know where 140 suspected terrorists, known and suspected terrorists, that entered the United States. He has no idea where they are. That they're running around, running amok in America as we speak. That they probably, I can't guarantee this, but they probably received a summons to show up in court 3 years from today. And we have no idea where they are. Because that's what the policy is at our southern border right now. You're an illegal alien, you're a criminal entering the United States. You get caught. You get a ticket. That ticket says, show up in court in 3 years and tell us why we should let you into America where you already are. And you've been living for 3 years. Just look at New York City. We have illegal aliens that entered our nation illegally. They all have a ticket, a summons, to show up in court in 3 years. What are they doing in between there? They're living in 4-star hotels in New York City until New York City runs out of money, and then New York City throws them onto the streets. We have a new wave of homeless people on our streets from Manhattan to the Bronx to Staten Island, all across the city, flooding our city. Illegal aliens that are homeless. Why? Because New York City ran out of money. Because they've been wasting the money putting these illegal aliens into hotels, spending $60,000 per illegal alien. Think about that. That's more than what most people who are watching this program, this is more money than most Americans make. The average American does not make $60,000. The average person in the middle class barely makes $60,000 a year. And we're giving that away to illegal aliens. Think about this, folks. Again, I'm not telling you have to be a conservative. You don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to vote in any specific way. You can be a libertarian. You can be a Democrat. You can be, God help you can be a progressive. But these are conversations you should be having. This is something our leaders should be discussing with us, and we should have a plan. I should be able to give you a plan. I should be able to show you in the media several news stories of these guys having a plan. The biggest story in America in the last week and possibly for the entire year is there are 140 potential 9/11s running around America, and we have no idea where they are. They may or may not show up in court in 3 years to justify why they are here. God knows what kind of trouble they could start between now and then. But hey, we need an open border because the UN said everyone has a right to enter any country they want to, except Poland, because Poland says that's stupid. I mean, is there anyone who disagrees? Please let me see the comments. If there's an elected official, a Democrat who's running as a candidate, Josh Riley in the New York 19, please tell me how I am wrong. Show me the evidence that exists anywhere in the news media that's saying that the things I've just talked about are incorrect. Because you can't. I'm looking at the international news and the United States. It's real. But these aren't the stories you're supposed to pay attention to. Let me explain why I am getting so hyper about war and why people are talking about World War III more and more today than they have been in the last 20, 30 years. Why there are people who are scared to death right now. They are terrified of what's about to happen. Why we have Air Force generals warning America and the world that there will be a war with China somewhere over the next 3 to 5 years. We've seen this. Why are people saying this? Let's really delve into this. Well, before I go to that, Vic mentions the Democrat point on illegals is they work and pay taxes. No, they don't. If this were true, why does New York budget nearly $8 billion a year in their budget collected from citizen taxpayers? Okay, so what Vic is mentioning is, and I believe, Vic, the number is actually $5.9 billion. New York State spends about $5.9 billion on illegal aliens every year. That's money that's going out. New York State is in a deficit of about $8 billion. New York State spends $8 billion more than we bring in every year, which is why we're losing money as a state. And 5.9 billion of that 8 billion loss is money we spend on illegal aliens. You know, putting them in hotels, building hotels, as well as putting them in 3- and 4-star hotels, spending $60,000 of your taxpayer dollar. If the Democrats were correct that illegal aliens add to America, they bring in taxes, they're helping us, we wouldn't have a shortage of money. Mayor Eric Adams would not be saying, as he is right this second, saying that New York City has run out of money and he is putting illegal aliens out onto the streets in Manhattan. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't be shipping. Literally, the New York City Democrats are shipping illegal aliens against the will of the people and sending them across New York State to the other 60 counties across New York, and they're dropping off illegal aliens on the footsteps of people who never asked for them to come in, who never asked for that burden, who can't afford that burden, just like Oneida County, Cortland County, Broome County. That's central New York. They can't afford this. They can't handle this. And yet, that's his answer. Oh, well, I've got homeless people, so let me send those homeless people to someone else and let it be someone else's problem. Yeah, and we have people like Matt Ryan, who I happen to know. I've known him since he was mayor of Binghamton, New York. Matt Ryan, who's running for the DA of Broome County, a man who believes in social justice, who believes it is the purpose of the DA to create law. This is where we're seeing the failure. He wants to allow illegal aliens to not have a crime. That breaking the law, entering America illegally, breaking and entering is no longer a crime if you have the right politics, if you have the right skin color. He is willing to break the law and allow people to break the law if they have the right skin color. And if Matt Ryan disputes that, we can have that conversation, Matt, because I've said it to your face. This is nothing more than I've said to your face, and I disagree with you. And this is your policy. This is what you have said publicly. But these are the problems. These are the problems. And the problem is bigger than you think, folks. Let me explain. So what you see here is an article that we did back a year ago. It was a year ago that General Mark Milley admitted on September 14th of a little bit more than a year ago. It was September 14th of 2021 that we found out that General Mark Milley committed treason, that he called up China to give them advice about what the American military was doing in 2020. Do you remember that? Because you're not supposed to. The mainstream news media saw the story and let it die. They said Trump was a bad guy, and so Milley was a hero for breaking the law, for breaking the chain of command, for helping the enemy, China, that same Chinese government that right now is trying to control the infrastructure of Europe, that same Chinese government that has made deals with everyone in Africa and in South America to deny the United States resources. It is the same China that is funding and supporting Russia in the war in the Ukraine. Mark Milley. This is who Mark Milley spoke to. Now, this is important to understand, and I want you to connect this. Now, Mark Milley in 2020 helped out China. What we know from the Air Force, and this was reported July 6th of 2023, the Air Force just conducted their largest military exercise ever. The largest ever mobility exercise to prove the prowess, to show that the United States Air Force is still capable and powerful and useful in the Pacific. Gee, where is China becoming active? The Pacific. The Philippines is asking for new American bases for the first time in 30 years because they're afraid of China. Australia is building 30 nuclear submarines because they're afraid of China. We are watching Southeast Asia. South Korea is becoming the fourth largest weapons manufacturer in the world because they're afraid of China. Japan is building the first army that they have ever had since 1945 because they're afraid of China. And all of these countries are building up their militaries because no one trusts the Biden-Harris administration to protect them. Because if they did, we wouldn't need that. And up until the last couple of years, we have seen that Japan never got a military before. They do now under Biden-Harris. North Korea wasn't worried about making weapons of war to protect their people and to arm their military until Biden-Harris. Australia wasn't worried about having 30 new nuclear weapons platforms, submarines. They weren't worried about that until Biden-Harris. And now we have the Air Force is conducting the largest exercise ever because they have to show the Pacific, all of these nations I've just mentioned, they have to reassure them that America still can fight, whether or not Joe Biden wants to fight, whether or not Kamala Harris understands how to fight, that we have the ability. They did this to convince our allies that there's a reason why they should be our allies. But let me continue with this because it doesn't end there. I had a friend from the Liberty First Foundation. They pointed out that on July 24th, it was announced the Navy and the Marine Corps are having their largest ever exercise, the largest ever exercise that's going to be happening in 22 different time zones around the world. This is a big deal. That they're going to have a simultaneous exercise basically across the globe with 6 different divisions and where is it? It's going to be 6 maritime component commands, 700 fleets, and 22 time zones. And this is happening August 9th through the 18th for 9 days. Gee, that means they're going to be in Southeast Asia. This is a message to both Russia, Iran, and China that the Marines can be anywhere, which they can, and that we have the capability, both with our Navy and the Marine Corps, to be anywhere in the world and to make a difference. This is a plea to our allies that we still matter, that even under the Biden-Harris administration, America is still significant, that we can still protect our allies because they don't think we can. They don't think we can or that we will. They don't think we will because of General Mark Milley. Remember, Mark Milley was colluding with the Chinese government, which we consider an act of treason. He was advising the Chinese government about U.S. troops, which the New York Times told us made him a hero. We think it made him a villain, that he was treasonous against the United States. But our allies looked at it and said, wait a minute, you're the general of the Joint Chiefs. He's working with the Chinese. Kamala Harris doesn't know what she's talking about. Joe Biden doesn't remember anything that isn't on a placard put in front of his face so he can know where to sit in a room. We don't have confidence in that. There are 30,000 Americans that have been abandoned by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris around the world. We say this we've been saying this since September of 2021. 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan, 10,000 Americans into Ukraine, 15,000 Americans into Sudan this year alone. That's 30,000 Americans abandoned. As General Milley is giving advice against America to the Chinese, as the rest of Southeast Asia is building up its military. And now we have the Marines, and we have the Air Force, and we have the Navy that are going out and they're building up displays of our capabilities to reassure our allies, as China is saying, yeah, we're just going to barn stomp all over you. This should terrify people. This should be a big deal. We need to talk about this, but we're not. You see, here's the other news that you probably didn't hear. China and Russia are well aware that the Air Force just had the biggest military exercise ever. The Marine Corps and the Navy is literally within 3 days starting the biggest exercise they have ever done in 22 time zones simultaneously. They are doing this around the world all at once. And the answer from China and Russia was they decided to kind of attack Alaska. Oh, did you not hear about this? Wasn't this big news? No, it wasn't. The news is just now breaking that the Chinese and Russians had a fleet running towards Alaska. A fleet, 11 ships, Chinese and Russian ships. After after the Air Force tried to impress the world, before the Navy and the Marine Corps was trying to impress the world, China said, they're not afraid, they're not impressed, and they decided to run up towards Alaska. Don't have to believe me. There are senators who are speaking about this. This is a fact. In fact, it's a historical first, said Brent Sadler, a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation and a retired Navy captain. Given the context of the war in the Ukraine and tensions around Taiwan, this move is highly provocative. This is a first. After America uses the Air Force in a display of power, ahead of the Navy and the Marines putting on their display of power, Russia says, none of that matters. Here's 11 ships. They're going after Alaska. That's a fact. Let's go a little bit more into this. This is Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska. What did he have to say about this? The incursion by 11 Chinese and Russian warships operating together unilaterally, working as a combined force off the coast of Alaska. That's America. Canadians should be concerned as well. He goes on to say, is yet another reminder that what we have entered is a new era of authoritarian aggression. Authoritarian because Russia and China are authoritarian countries. You may be a progressive. You may have bought into this Obama, Biden, hate America progressive ideology, but the fact is, China and Russia are authoritarian nations. Not America, China is. He goes on to say, led by the dictators in Beijing and Moscow, in recognition of this reality and our state's unrivaled strategic location, for years, he's been pressing the Navy and each successive administration to commit a greater naval, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps presence in Alaska, more Arctic-capable vessels, and more infrastructure. He goes on to say, last summer, the Chinese and Russian navies conducted a similar operation. This isn't the first time they did this. It is the first time they did this on such a large scale. They have been scaling up. They were not deterred the first time they did this last summer under the Biden-Harris administration, with General Milley still in charge of the Joint Chiefs. General Milley, the man who calls up China to tell them what the United States military is doing. A treasonous action. We did not impress the Chinese. We did not impress the Russians. And they decided to attack or approach Alaska last year. And now they decided to do it again and increased the numbers. They increased the threat because the Biden-Harris administration didn't do anything. And the world watched. The world wasn't impressed. The world said, wait a minute, you're not doing anything about this? You're just going to let Russia and China basically attack Alaska to embarrass the United States. The rest of the world said, wait a minute, this is important news. The U.S. news media said, don't worry about it. They didn't even tell you about it. Is there anyone in the audience that can say, gee, I remember hearing about this story. I remember that Biden, what did he do? What did he do? What did Kamala Harris do? Nothing. They did nothing. And our allies saw they did nothing. And China and Russia got bolder. Just like they did right after we abandoned 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan to the Taliban. We gave up to the Taliban. We ran as fast as possible under the Biden-Harris administration from the Taliban a couple of thousand guys with a bunch of handguns, and we ran away from them and gave them tanks and gave them helicopters and gave them weapons and money. We ran away and left 5,000 of our own people and just forgot about them. Then we forgot about the 10,000 in the Ukraine. Now we're forgetting about the 15,000 in the Sudan. You don't see that story anymore. Nobody in the news media is talking about it. Everyone has forgotten that we got 300 Americans out of the Sudan and 15,000 are still stuck there as a civil war is happening. And not one American news media agency is talking about this. Not one is reporting what happened to those people. Not one has told you that the Biden administration has any kind of plan to take care of those Americans. And China and Russia is paying attention. And they said, we're not afraid. If you're not even willing to get your people out, if you can't beat the Taliban, if you can't get your people out of the Sudan, India and United Kingdom, they got their people out of the Sudan in the thousands. America got 300 people out. If we can't lead in even protecting our people around the world, and we're not willing to stand up to Russia and China as they essentially attack Alaska, do you think China is afraid of attacking Taiwan? Do you think Russia's worried about what America's going to do when it comes to Western Europe? Because our allies are telling us they're not afraid. They're not worried. And it's getting worse. And so it's the Wild West. Everyone has to fend for themselves, which creates more chaos. More of the problem. Again, I'm showing you. You don't have to believe me. Listen to what the senators of Alaska are telling you. Remember that General Mark Milley is still around. He is still advising, theoretically, the Chinese, maybe the Biden administration. We don't know. And the fact that the Air Force and the Marines and the Navy are coming out to make this big show of force is not helping. I want you to think about this. No one else is talking about this, and this is important. We should be talking as a nation about this. This affects every nation in the world. This affects the American people, wherever you are. It affects people in Alaska. It affects the west coast of America. That's California. Hello, California. And if you think that the Chinese are going to be nice because California is made up of a lot of progressives, you haven't listened to the Communist Manifesto. You haven't looked at what they do to people in China. Have you seen what China does to people who are gay or lesbian or trans? They make people disappear forever just because they have a belief in religion. And you think you're going to do better? You think they're actually going to support you? That they're going to treat you nicer than everyone else? No, they're not. They're going to kill you because they don't care. I mean, I'm being blunt and honest with people because no one else is. Because this is a conversation we really, desperately, absolutely need to have in this country at this time. Because we are facing 3 regional wars, and it is potential to become World War III. I don't think it will be World War III because Russia and China don't like each other. Iran doesn't like any of them. North Korea really doesn't like 3 out of the 4. The fact is that the potential of it getting worse is growing. People are starving around the world. There is a food crisis. There is instability. The EU is breaking down. NATO is in trouble. There are people like Poland that are rejecting NATO's ideas. They are going off on their own. This all ties back to because America doesn't have leaders. We don't have anyone who's standing up right now. We're talking about Joe Biden. We're talking about Kamala Harris. We're talking about Chuck Schumer. We're talking about Hakeem Jeffries. We're talking about AOC and the squad. We don't have people who are standing up for America. They are failing en masse. They are failing us. And the rest of the world is reacting. And it is getting more and more dangerous. And I can't say that enough or strongly enough that we just had the Air Force, where we have Air Force, Navy, Marines that are all doing the biggest show of force in the history of America on a global basis, right in front of the Chinese in the Pacific Ocean, right on their doorstep. And their answer is, look, we can attack Alaska. Does that sound like they're scared, intimidated, like they care in the least what the Biden-Harris administration is doing? And can we be confident that General Mark Milley didn't throw yet another president under a bus, called up his buddies in China, and told them that this was all going to happen? God forbid he may be telling them that this is all for show and that nothing will ever happen. That we will not defend Taiwan. We will not defend Japan. We will not defend South Korea or any part of the Southeast Asia, at least while Mark Milley is involved. Look, you don't have to agree with me. Again, I've said it before. You don't have to agree with me. You can say, Mike, I think you're wrong. I think there's another conclusion. Fantastic. What is it? Tell me. I want to be wrong. I pray to be wrong. I am desperate to be wrong. I do not want to see another regional war happening in the world. I do not want to see that lead to World War III. I do not want to see more food riots. I want the enemies of freedom around the world to pause because the United States Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marines have all acted on the biggest display of power the world has ever seen. I would love for that to be the fact. That isn't the case. And if that is your reason for feeling safe at night, you should be sleepless. Because that's not safety. That's an illusion. It's not even an illusion. It's just an outright lie. Let me continue. So, I want to go back in time a little bit. Because, again, we do long-form political policy. We remember the things the news media wants you to forget, like what the impact of General Mark Milley has had on international politics, like what happened in Afghanistan, like what's happened in 2016. Let me go back with you. In 2016, we had the article talking about Iran capturing U.S. sailors. And it's going to be important. I want you to understand, why am I talking about Iran? Why am I talking about Iran under the Obama administration? This is January 14th of 2016, the end of the Obama administration. And what do we see here? Obama, after making a deal with Iran, the Iran nuclear deal was made. That was in effect. And Iran captured 10 American sailors. Do you remember that story? It was somewhat big news at the time, but it faded very, very quickly. And we were reacting to that. On January 12th, we started to make comments about why isn't the Obama administration, the Obama-Biden administration, Joe Biden, Mr. International Policy himself, What were they doing? Why were they allowing Iran to capture American soldiers? Well, as it turned out, we found out on January 13th at about 4 a.m. The reason why is because Barack Obama had then Secretary John Kerry apologize to Iran for having the American soldiers, having the American troops, the sailors, supposedly on Iranian territory in their ocean. Think about that. This is the reason why. And the news came from the BBC, talking about the Middle East at the time. The U.S. has apologized to Iran after 10 American sailors were arrested for entering Iranian waters, the commanders of Iran's Revolutionary Guard naval forces said. Think about that. Barack Obama said nothing for days, allowed American troops to be captured by a nation that promises to kill America. That as Americans, as we signed the Iran nuclear deal, even as the ink was drying on that agreement, the Ayatollah was screaming to kill all Americans. Doesn't matter about your political ideology, your sexual preference, your color of skin. He wanted us all dead. We are the greater devil, and he wanted to kill everyone in Israel because they're the little devil. As the ink was drying on the Iran nuclear deal, they captured Americans, and Obama apologized. Now, why is that important? Why am I bringing up what happened in 2016, 7 years ago? Because there's a couple of parts to this that I think are important to understand. First thing is, remember, this has to do with General Mark Milley, a man who does not inspire confidence, a man who is willing to work with our enemies to undermine the United States. Something that comes from President Obama, who is willing to undermine the United States' safety in giving Iran a nuclear deal that funded global terror. Again, John Kerry said this himself. He was on CNBC. It was January 21st of 2016. He told us that we were literally funding international terrorism because of the Iran nuclear deal. And Obama, at the same time, was kowtowing to the Ayatollah, apologizing for having sailors that are in the ocean, that were taken prisoner by Iran, his supposed ally and best buddy that had just signed a deal with him after paying off Iran. This is the scenario. This is the setup. And what does that lead to today? The same people, the same Iran, with the same Ayatollah, the same people who are praying day after day, screaming, death to America, we are the greater devil, death to Israel, they are the little devil. They want to see Europe dead as well. They want everyone dead that doesn't believe exactly what the Ayatollah tells him to. These are the people in Iran who will poison schoolgirls for daring to be able to read. They poison girls, young girls, for being able to read. They punish women for daring to drive. Think about who we are making these deals with. Look at what those guys who are not intimidated, they were not intimidated by Obama. They made Obama bow. The president of the largest, most powerful military in the world, Obama, bowed to Iran. And they never forgot that. And the second man, the number 2 under Obama at that time in 2016 is Joe Biden, the guy who's in the White House right now. And that same guy, Joe Biden, is desperately has been desperately, since day one, trying to reenact the Iran nuclear deal that will increase the net global terror in the world. That is a fact. It's not a guess. It's not a question. It is a fact. They will use the money to create more global terror. That guy, Joe Biden, the number 2, that was standing right next to Obama as Obama bowed to the Iranians for taking Americans prisoner. We now have this. Iran has been, under the Biden administration, has been capturing ships. So much so in the Strait of Hormuz that something has to be done. It cannot be ignored, even though it is being ignored. It cannot be ignored anymore. That's at the highest levels. The American people don't know. You probably don't know what the Strait of Hormuz is. They do. The military does. Iran does. And so we're about to put Marines on on ships that are traveling past Iran, not into Iran. These aren't Iranian ships. It's not ships that are doing business with Iran. These are ships that are floating past Iran. And we're going to put Marines on every single one of them. How? We don't have that many Marines, by the way. We don't have enough Marines for this. There are only about 200,000 Marines in the world. And by the way, the size of the U.S. military is shrinking. The size of the Marine Corps is shrinking. We don't have enough Marines to do this and to have a global display of power around the world. We don't have the Marines for this. We don't have enough Marines. It's a fact. Again, it's not a question. It's a fact. No one's surprised by this. Everyone knows how many Marines there are in the world. It's not a secret. We don't have enough for this. But we're doing this because the Biden administration thinks this is a great idea. Remember, they're doing this while at the same time, General Mark Milley remains in the Joint Chiefs in the United States. He is advising the Biden administration. This is terrifying to me. Look at this. The U.S. moves to put Marines on commercial ships to stop Iran's seizures. Wait a minute, but Iran doesn't care. But Iran doesn't care. See, this is a story, again, like the naval engagements, to make the world think we care, to make the world think that we can protect them. This is for our allies to feel like they're protected. But this is the same administration, the same exact administration that apologized when when push came to shove and America had to face off against Iran. 10 of our soldiers were improperly, illegally, almost criminally, were captured by Iran. It was Obama and Biden blinked and apologized quietly. Embarrassingly, they bowed down. Do you think that Iran is going to stop for a second knowing that they're dealing with a guy who is willing to bow down? Or do you think Iran is going to stop knowing that Joe Biden, not only did he bow down with Obama in 2016, but in 2021, he abandoned 5,000 Americans. In 2022, he abandoned 10,000 Americans. In 2023, he abandoned 15,000 Americans. Do you think he is at all worried? Iran is watching that as America, under the Biden-Harris administration, with General Mark Milley, the traitor, in our ranks, even as we are having these global operations at the largest size ever seen in the history of mankind, and Russia and China are so intimidated that they're sending ships at Alaska. John says, Mike, on the phone number, yes, I know the phone number is not working. I know my phone is off. I don't have the money. The phone is off because I don't have the money, so no one can call in today. I apologize, folks. If you didn't hear me say that at the beginning of the show, let me say it again. Today, no one can call in because the phone is off. We don't have the money. So, again, you can donate to our Patreon or to YouTube, to PayPal. To donate to us, we ask you only to like, share, and subscribe. Let me say that again. We're asking you to like, share, and subscribe. Not because you're a Republican, not because you're a conservative, not because you're a libertarian, but because we're having an honest conversation with you. We are showing you the evidence, and we're having the conversation with you that NBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Biden-Harris administration do not have the balls to have with you. They do not want to have this conversation with you. We are having that conversation with you. And what do we get for it? We get ostracized. Our channel is suppressed, regularly suppressed. We've shown you the evidence of that on a regular basis. We just showed you recently, 3 days ago, how Facebook is trying to silence our videos. From January 1st, they waited 8 months, and now they're punishing us, not letting people to see some of our videos. Why? We don't know. They won't even tell us why. We showed you the video of that. We showed you the pictures of that evidence. So, if you want the phones on, you want to be able to call into the program, please donate. We appreciate it. If not, just like, share, and subscribe, so that you know that even though you may not be able to call in, you do have the ability to at least type, like Vic has, like Dal has, like John is, like Graham has. And I'm going to get to the movie in a second, but I think this is important for us to understand. Why do you need to start stockpiling food? It's real simple, folks. General Mark Milley can't be trusted. The Biden-Harris administration can't be trusted. They just can't. The progressive movement can't be trusted. And I understand there's people who are going to say, but I'm a progressive. Mike, I'm a good person. You as an individual might be progressive and be a good person. Completely possible. The leadership is not. The movement is not. Because the leadership do not have your best interest or anyone's best interest in mind. They want power, and they don't care. The Biden-Harris administration, the only thing they're looking at is they want to get reelected. They want Democrats reelected. They want power. And everything they have done since the day they have come in has been to try and protect the next election. They're not fixing things. They're not solving anything. They're not saving anyone. They're just trying to get to the next election. When they abandoned the Americans, they stopped talking about them. That didn't help anyone. In fact, it helped to cause us to have more Americans that were thrown to the wayside. We haven't impressed our allies or our enemies, as we've just shown you. Showing you the evidence. Now you can say, Mike, but I don't agree. Fantastic. But that doesn't change the evidence of what, and again, don't think of this as, gee, you're on the left or the right and you're listening to this. Think of this as you're the Chinese government. Are you intimidated? Are you afraid of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris at all? Think of yourself as Iran, a nation that wants to destroy everyone that does not believe what the Ayatollah says. Are you intimidated? Are you afraid of the Biden-Harris administration at all? Are you afraid of Mark Milley at all? Do you have any confidence that the American military, under those leaders, will stand up against you? Because all the evidence says no. None of these countries are afraid. None of them are restricted. And in fact, every single one of these nations are becoming more aggressive, not less. They are militarizing faster now than they ever have before. They are preparing for war. So when I tell you, and when we have been saying on this channel since 2022, February of 2022, that you need to buy 10% more food every time you go out to the store, to buy more flour, more rice, more grain, more canned foods. There's more to it than just saving some money. It's more than just the global food crisis that is not stopping. It's preparation for what's coming next. It's, God forbid that we are right. And I want to be wrong. I really do. I want to be wrong. But prepare for the worst and celebrate the fact that it doesn't happen. Prepare for the worst and celebrate when the worst doesn't happen. That's far better. I want you to have extra food. I want you to be trained. I want you to be prepared. I want you to have the Second Amendment to defend yourself, to be proficient in using firearms, whether it be rifles or shotguns or handguns, to be able to defend yourself and your family, to be able to have bulletproof vests to protect yourself and your family, because our enemies are not afraid and they are active because they aren't concerned. They don't have any faith or confidence or trust. They are not being deterred. So that's why I want you to be prepared. Does that make sense, folks? What I have just walked through about the status of the world, what I have just walked through with you about what's happening with our enemies and our allies as the United States is making the biggest display of power that has ever existed in the face of the world. You may think it's pretty impressive. Apparently, Russia and China, they don't. That's why they were approaching Alaska in our faces. In our faces. And both Democrats and Republicans, members of the Senate, stood up and said, hang on, this is a problem. It's not because we're left or right. It's because it's a problem, period, point blank. I don't care about your political ideology. I don't care what your sexual gender is. I don't care what your sexual preferences are. They mean nothing to me. China doesn't care. Russia doesn't care. And they're not afraid. Which makes me believe that in 2027 or 2028, they are absolutely going to go and start a regional war. That they will invade Taiwan. They may attack Japan. They may attack South Korea. And the rest of the world is cowering in fear because we have leaders right now that don't even know where to sit in a room without having someone give them a cue card to tell them where to go. Let me pause for a second here, because John did make a comment. As you know, he can't call in. No one can call in at the moment. So, because the phones are down, we don't have the money. But John said that he saw the full movie, the Barbie movie. So he wants to comment on that. And John mentions that he would rate the movie a -2 out of 10. That the movie is an abomination and spits in the face to all the work that everyone has done in the last 5 years. I agree with you, John. And that's why people should see the Sound of Freedom, which has gone international, which is about human trafficking, about child trafficking, about the problems that that America is facing, that the world is facing, that the failure to address these issues is making things worse. Go and watch Sound of Freedom. If you're going to spend the money to go to movies, go and do that. The Barbie movie isn't helping anyone. The Barbie movie is meant to distract you from what we have just gone over with you in detail. Something that MSNBC will not do. CNN will not do it. Oh, they'll be happy to put out headline after headline and video clip after video clip once fighting starts, just like they did with Ukraine. Once there's an act of war and they can make money supporting their side, they'll be happy to tell you about it then. The thing is, we need people telling you about it now. Just like Senator Dan Sullivan, as we showed you, he is on Twitter. He is talking to the Biden administration right now. He is telling us that there is a problem right now. Because I truly believe that if China in 2027 or 2028 attacks Taiwan because they think America is weak, because the American Navy is shrinking, and the Chinese Navy is growing by double in the same time frame, because there are fewer Marines around the world today than there were just a month ago, and we're stretching them thin because we're trying to put them in the Strait of Hormuz as well as around the world. We don't have the people for this. China knows it, and they know that they can put 11 naval weapons, naval ships off the coast of Alaska without any fear. Because the guy who's in charge now was part of the crowd that were bowing to Iran. They are the ones who bowed to the Taliban. They are the ones who ran away from the Sudan. And that does not instill confidence. Does anyone think I am wrong? You don't have to agree. But do you think I'm wrong? Tell me why. I'm happy to hear why. And I know you can't call in right now. Type it out. On YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can go to DLive. If you're on Rumble, you can tell me on Rumble. Matter of fact, let me check in on Rumble. I haven't checked there. Bear with me a second. I want to see what the conversation is on Rumble right now. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about 5-6 times. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. And I know there's people watching on Rumble. There's normally about on Rumble 5-6 than on any other service. 500, 600. Did that take care of it? I think that took care of it. I apologize for that. I think I saw where that came from. For some reason, it was coming from Rumble. So I apologize. But thank you for making me aware of that, Graham. So I'm very concerned, and the more that we can see history overall, the more we can see these conflicts and the problems that they bring. Okay, Graham. Thank you, Graham. Yeah, I found it. So I'm a bit upset about these things. And I hope, if there's nothing else, if you've seen this channel for the first time, whether on Rumble or DLive or YouTube or Facebook, wherever you saw it, if nothing else, share this concern about World War III, this concern about 3 regional wars, about the global food crisis. Share this with your friends so that they can be prepared, and we can all ask our elected officials, Democrats and Republicans alike, what are they doing? Because they're supposed to answer to us. And telling us, well, we'll be like Europe is not an answer. We'll have open borders is not an answer. We're going to ignore the human trafficking is not an answer. Bowing to China and Russia is not an answer. So we need to deal with that. Let's move to perhaps more local, more domestic issues. That's global. We've been talking about the world, how the world is being affected by this. And I guarantee you, not only Southeast Asia, but we're talking about Europe, we're talking about the United Kingdom, are all affected by everything we've been talking about for the last 2 hours. Even though the mainstream news media doesn't want to talk about any of this. Fair enough. So let's take a look at something else. See, what we're supposed to be paying attention to right now, according to the mainstream news media, is about Joe Biden and the fact that he has never, according to the news media, we're being told Joe Biden has never been involved with Hunter Biden's business. We've heard that from 2019 going forward. Joe Biden has promised he has no connection to his son's business. There is no influence peddling. He is a saint, and you need to reelect him because he has never done anything wrong. Except, let's actually pay attention to the details here. I wanted to go over this because no one's really talking about this. So, leaving the deposition of Devin Archer, this is Representative Dan Goldman, said that Archer testified, we don't have the transcript, but he said this week that the witness was very consistent that none of the conversations with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and a bunch of businessmen had anything to do with business, any kind of deals or transactions. And I don't know if Dan Goldman is an idiot or if he's just being partisan. But this is the distraction that we're getting. We're not supposed to talk about this. We're not supposed to think about this. You're not supposed to look at Joe Biden in this way. Hunter Biden, this is a fact. We know this is a fact that Hunter Biden, as we can tell, Joe Biden and Devin Archer, who is a partner of Hunter Biden, have been in communications and talking about business deals since 2011. Not 2017, not 2015, which is the money trail we have seen. No, 2011, deep in the Obama-Biden administration when he was vice president. And let me prove this to you, because it's not even a question. We know for a fact that Joe Biden, as vice president in 2011, sent a letter that said in part, quote, Joe Biden, I apologize for not getting the chance to talk to Devin Archer at a luncheon. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President Hu. This is a visiting Chinese president, Hu Jintao. Think about that. So he's telling, Joe Biden went to an event, a luncheon, with Hunter Biden, his team, Hunter Biden's business and partners, where he's interacting with world leaders. Gee, that's not influence peddling. But let me go back to what we first saw. I want to deal with this Dan Goldman part. Somehow, Dan Goldman and the Democratic Party and the Democrat-leaning left news media want you to believe that if you're having a business meeting and you have the ability, the full power to pick up a cell phone, dial it, and get the second most powerful person in America, if not the world, on the phone, on the speakerphone, that's not influence peddling. That's bragging. Those are huge bragging rights. Hey, how powerful am I? I can get the second most powerful person in the world 20 times during business meetings to pick up a phone, to join my phone call just because I have his phone number. I have him on speed dial. You don't think that's going to affect the business deal? You don't think that's a business transaction? That is a statement of power? That you are peddling the influence that you have, that you can reach this individual at any time you want to get them in a speakerphone, or to have that person just happen to show up at a business meeting. You don't need to say, let's make the deal because I have the vice president in my back pocket. He showed up. That's all you needed to do. Is this that hard to figure out? Perhaps it is, because progressives seem to understand nothing about business. They lie about politics, but they seem to understand nothing about business. It is one of the most powerful moves you could possibly do. If I wanted to do an NBA deal, if I'm talking to someone about my selling sneakers, and I am able to put Michael Jordan on my cell phone 20 times in meetings and have him just chat with you, if we go out to a business lunch and Michael Jordan just so happens to walk on up and join our business lunch and just have a conversation with me casually, do you think I might be able to get Michael Jordan to be able to do a sneaker deal? To push some of the product that we're selling? Do you think maybe the fact that I casually and commonly and easily know Michael Jordan well enough to have him on speed dial, do you think my business partners might say, hey, that could be useful. He might do a commercial for us. He might be able to convince his other friends in the NBA to sell these sneakers or these products, that he might be able to connect us to other celebrities that Michael Jordan knows so that we can make better business deals. Do you mean to tell me no one would ever make that connection? How stupid do they think the American people are? And God help us, they think you're dumb. They think you can't figure that out. Not only does Dan Goldman think that, but let's take a look at the article that comes. This is from BBC America. Biden was on the speakerphone in his son's calls. In case anyone thought, Mike, how do you know that Joe Biden was on the speakerphone 20 times with Hunter Biden during Hunter Biden business meetings? The BBC. Hunter Biden put his father, Joe Biden, the vice president, on the speakerphone up to 20 times while speaking with business associates, a U.S. congressional panel has learned. The evidence is there. Congress has the information. You now have the information. But we're being told that's not a big deal. That's not important. Doesn't mean anything. Joe Biden, who lied. This is a man who lies constantly and is always caught in his lies. He said there were only 100 Americans in Afghanistan and we'll get them home soon. No, there's 5,000. He lied to your face. He was part of the Obama administration when Obama lied to you and said you can keep your doctor because it's Obamacare. They lied. And Joe Biden lied to the American people when he said in 2019 that he had never been involved with Hunter Biden's business, even though he's been making phone calls and making connections with Hunter Biden's business partners since 2011 and received money since at least 2015. But the Democrats think you are dumb. The left-leaning news media think you are dumb. Dan Goldman thought you are dumb. They didn't actually make a contract. They didn't actually sign a contract or do a business deal. They don't need to. The evidence was already put in front of them. The influence was already on display. I don't need to put it in a contract when 20 times you heard me make a speed dial and the Vice President of the United States got on the phone. That the Vice President of the United States showed up at my lunch. I don't need speed dial. I don't need this in a contract. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone. But it seems it is. Here's another thing. Benjamin Weingarten, who is the editor at large, and we looked at this, he goes, Devin Archer mentions Hunter Biden putting the big guy, or my guy, Joe Biden, on the phone with Jonathan Lee during a dinner in Beijing. So Benjamin Weingarten, who's a blue check, decided to look into this. Who is Jonathan Lee? He is the CEO of BHR Partners, an investment fund founded by a company controlling major stake-owned Bank of China and a partnership that was led by Hunter Biden. Jonathan Lee is part of the Chinese government. BHR is controlled by the Bank of China, which is the government of China, the Chinese government. Because the Chinese government, the Communist Party, owns the businesses in China. They own the Bank of China. It is the Communist Party. So, Jonathan Lee is the Chinese government. He is a liaison by his connections for the Chinese government, whether he wants to or not. His company is owned by the Chinese government. He answers to agents and representatives of the Chinese Communist government. Jonathan Lee is a representative of the Chinese Communist Party, and he is doing business with Hunter Biden, who is busy showing off his political connections to his father, who happens to be, at the time, the sitting vice president. How many ways do we need to show this to the American people? But yet and still, I will hear Democrat after Democrat, progressive after progressive go, but Mike, it's not a problem. But Mike, he promised. He told us he didn't do it. He told us that it isn't. He's lying to your face. He lies to your face on a regular basis. Joe Biden is telling you that Bidenomics is helping you. He forgot to mention that inflation is up 17%. He forgot to mention that food inflation is up over 12% and climbing. He forgot to mention that there's 30,000 Americans that he abandoned. He forgot to mention that all of the enemies of the United States are growing more powerful day by day. He forgot to mention that he doesn't even know what he's supposed to mention because he doesn't have it on a cue card. Why are people trusting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as if they were credible sources of information or even political acumen? Does it make sense, folks? Am I so out of bounds? Have I just not understood things? I'm looking for the comments. Please tell me. Because I think it makes sense. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's obvious where we are being lied to. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am. I mean, we are hearing this from the same people. The people who are defending Joe Biden, we're getting people like this guy, who you see on the screen right now. This is Senator Richard Blumenthal, a man who received awards from the the American Communist Party. He was invited and went to the American Communist Party to get an award, to have a dinner, to raise money, and to get an award. This is Richard Blumenthal, and he supports the Biden agenda, the progressive ideology. Do you think that he's influenced by China? The Chinese communist government? Because this is a guy who goes to communist events. He takes money from the Communist Party. He takes awards from the Communist Party. He speaks at the events of the Communist Party. That's not me saying this. This is coming from WCIV. That's news. That's the legit news media. You don't have to believe me. It's happening. How about this? Let me see if I can come on. Or maybe it's you want to believe Dianne Feinstein, another Democrat, believes in Joe Biden, is telling you that the economy is fine, is telling you that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are doing a fantastic job. Yeah, she, like Richard Blumenthal, want to increase the amount of censorship that you live through every day. They want to give the government control over what free speech is, what you can say on the internet and what you cannot. And by the way, Dianne Feinstein, she's got lots of her own problems as is. Where is it? Here it is. Because Dianne Feinstein, who's 90, who has to be told what to say in Congress. She is told how to vote. Literally. It's on video. We showed you this last week, where the Democrats are literally telling her, vote yes. Oh, you voted no? Go back and change it and vote yes. They're telling her what to vote. They're telling her what to say. And why are they doing that? Because she doesn't even have power over her own legal situation. Her daughter does. Dianne Feinstein gave her daughter power of attorney. If you don't know what power of attorney is, that is when someone gives another person the legal right to make decisions for them. Legally binding decisions. To go to court, to sign a contract, to sell stuff. They might as well be you. They have the legal right to do anything according to the power of attorney. And Dianne Feinstein has given her daughter the power over everything, over her finances, over her court cases to her daughter. And at the same time, while she's giving up all of her power, she's still in Congress. She's still voting. Mind you, she's not voting on her own. She's being told what to vote. So at least her daughter is acting independently on the behalf, we think, of Dianne Feinstein. Fantastic. I'm not upset that Dianne Feinstein's 66-year-old daughter is making decisions. I got no problem with that. I have the problem that this woman is incapable of taking care of her own life. And that person who cannot handle the issues in her own life is still voting on the floor of the Senate as we are watching people walk up and tell her how to vote. This is the Progressive Party for you, folks. This is the progressives. This is the Democrat Party. They want control. You don't get to make any decisions. The party will make the decision. You will live with it. The party has said, Joe Biden, he's innocent, even as he lies to your face. Even as they tell you, Richard Blumenthal and Dianne Feinstein tell you, they want to have more censorship, not less. They don't want you to have free speech. They want to censor what you say. They want to control what you say, where you say it, and how you say it. And these are people who can't even make the decision themselves. They can't even make that argument. They're told what to say. They are literally puppets. It's not a question. Again, I'm showing you the evidence. At the end of the show, I will link every single bit of information I did, the research I did for this show. You'll see the links. You can go to every single one of the articles for yourself. If you have any doubt, if you haven't already looked up the articles while we're going through the show so you can read it for yourself, you can read it after the show. I'm not taking anything out of context. I'm showing you all the evidence. Hey, hot chicks. I'm so happy to have you here with us. Thank you. Again, I'm showing you the evidence. Tell me. This is the truth of what's happening in America. This is the honest conversation. This is the conversation that happens if you talk about American politics or global politics for more than a minute and 30 seconds. If you, more than a segment in the local nightly news. If you actually pay attention to the issues, look beyond the headlines, and actually have the conversation and remember the past at all, these are the conversations that you're left with. These are the realities that you are left with. And it's pretty damn scary. We have Democrats who have no idea what they are doing. They have no control over their lives. And they don't want you to have, and they don't want you to have control either. You don't get to have control over your life. They don't get to have control over their life. The party does. You are beholden to the Progressive Party, the progressive ideology. You are essentially a socialist. You're stuck in a socialist communist system. You don't matter. You're a category. Notice, what is progressive politics at this time? You're a category. Equity. You are, the only thing you count for is the number of categories you fill out. Are you male or female or something otherwise? Do you have a sexual preference, whatever that may be? What is your skin color? These are your categories. And they rank you based on those categories. And if you have the right set of categories, you're important to the progressives today. Tomorrow, they may change the ranking system. Tomorrow, you may not be as important. But today, you're important. You know, like Lizzo. Lizzo was very important to Democrats yesterday. Today, now that we know that she's been abusing her own people, not so much. Of course, to mention Lizzo and to say that she's not important anymore, it isn't because she's fat. No, that would be fat shaming. I could care less. I don't care if that Lizzo is fat. I'm not attracted to her. I don't listen to her music. Don't care. Don't care that she's black or a woman. Not of interest to me. What is interesting to me is that she's being thrown under the bus by the very same progressives she gathered all the money for. All the people that she was trying to convince you to vote for threw her under the bus, as they should have, even though the only reason why, it isn't that Lizzo just started to abuse her people, her dancers. She's been doing that for a while. They knew about this. They didn't care. Now that you know about it, now they care. And now they're throwing Lizzo under the bus. It's the same thing they did with Epstein. They all knew about Epstein's Island. Hollywood was taking the trips over there. The politicians were taking trips over there. Hell, we know that Trump took at least one, and we know that Bill Clinton and what's his name? Microsoft. Bill Gates. We know they were there several times. Why? Well, we don't know that because no one's going to look in the black book. No one asked Ghislaine Maxwell why. But we know they did it. We know they knew about it. No one's talking about it. They knew about Lizzo. They're just not talking about it. Until now that she got caught. Now they care. This is what progressives get you. This is what the progressives get you. It's about being a slave, about being subordinate, about being a category. You are not you're not a person and you're not important. You're just there to maintain their power. Does anyone think I'm wrong? I'm happy to hear you. If you say, Mike, no, Mike, you just don't understand. Lizzo is a great human being that abuses other human beings. Fantastic. Tell me why. If you want to tell me, well, Mike, you got to understand. Because of her body is beautiful no matter what that body is, and that excuses her abusing her staff. No, that argument is not working for you? Well, she's supporting people like Biden who lies to the American people and gets caught on a regular basis. Who's been lying to the American people, apparently, since 2011. Oh, but that's not a reason either? Do you notice, when you pay attention to the details, when you read more than just a headline, when you're looking at the news not just from what is allowed to be printed in America, but around the rest of the world, you get a very different impression of what's going on. And sadly, it's not a good impression. It's not a good thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about this article this is from the New York Times, that right now in New York City, there are illegal aliens. They like to call them migrants. They're not migrants. They're illegal aliens. They broke the law. You can call them criminals. If you don't want to call them illegal aliens, call them criminals because they have committed a crime. They're criminals, fugitives of the law. So the New York Times is upset because the illegal aliens that entered the United States, that are in New York City, that have been living in a hotel costing $300 a day, well, they're now out on the street. They're now out on the street. And since I first looked at the article, the New York Times has now put it behind a paywall. I'm not paying for it. You shouldn't pay for it either. Or at least I'm not going to pay what the New York Times wants me to pay for it. But this shouldn't surprise you. Eric Adams, a practical progressive, is taking your money and he spent it on illegal aliens. He could have made the Bronx safer. He could have paid for children in New York to get free lunches and free breakfasts. He could have spent the money to house the veterans and the homeless. And by the way, instead of housing the homeless or feeding the homeless, Eric Adams kicked them out of hotels for months upon months upon months. He's been kicking homeless people out of the hotels, out of shelters, so that criminals, illegal aliens, could be there instead. And he's spending 3-4 times as much money per illegal alien to give them a higher quality of life as he takes American citizens and kicks them out into the streets. I have no compassion for Eric Adams. I have no compassion for New York City progressives. They threw people under a bus, and now they're complaining because the people they picked, the illegal alien criminals that they chose to champion, are now out on the streets along with American citizens. Now they have a problem. Now we have to do something about the homeless issue because the illegal aliens are homeless, and that is a horror. I'm sorry, you should have been doing something about the homeless in the first place. They have the priority, especially since they're American citizens and they've been here. They're your priority, not the criminals that came in at Johnny-come-lately and broke the law and said, give me a place to stay. I'm sorry, I have no obligation. We have zero, as individuals, as a state, as a nation, we have zero obligation to these illegal aliens. We don't need to give them a damn thing. That doesn't make me racist. That doesn't make me sexist. It does make me someone who's fighting against human trafficking. Let's take away that incentive. But at the same time, we have no obligation. We didn't break their laws, they broke ours. We didn't take them from their country and bring them here. They came to ours. They broke and entered into our nation, into our homes. They're taking our money away from things that we could use this for, like feeding our kids, like taking care of our homeless. And we're spending so much money on these illegal aliens that New York City, as well as New York State, is going bankrupt. We don't have money left over to do anything else. I'm sorry, that's a problem. And if you think, well, that's just New York City, California's doing the same thing. Washington State's doing the same thing. Colorado's doing the same thing. New Jersey, Delaware, Illinois. Look at your bluer than blue states, and guess what? They're spending themselves bankrupt on your back, on your taxes, not to take care of kids and to feed them, not to help the homeless, but to take care of illegal aliens, criminals that broke our laws. User's been banned. User, hello, thank you for joining us. User has been banned, says, and the federal government will bail them out. That's right. Well, yeah, federal government wants to bail them all out. People like, people like one of our favorite people, Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell, who is finally being asked, or at least we're able to see finally, his constituents are asking him about the Chinese spy. He's right there, and obviously people still remember, just like I remember General Milley is a traitor, in our opinion. He's treasonous and a traitor to the United States. Well, we got people like Eric Swalwell, who's being called out for being a tool of the Chinese government, that he was being used by Chinese spies. And that's why people are asking, where's Peng Peng? And that he is a liar, because he is nonstop lying, just like Joe Biden. We need to call out more of these politicians. On the left, on the right, on the center, I don't care where they are. We need to call them out. We need to call these people out, because they are harming America. I mean, when I say they're harming America, let me be clear about this, folks. You may not have noticed this. This is news out of Wisconsin. So if you're in California, if you're in Illinois, you're in New York City, you're down south, you probably didn't hear about this news. It's not the biggest news. Again, news that has the most importance to you, you don't hear about. International news, American news media doesn't want to tell you about it. You're not supposed to think about it. You get a headline and that's about it. You're not supposed to pay attention to the details. Well, the same thing's happening inside America as is happening outside America, like in Wisconsin, where the Wisconsin Supreme Court Chief Justice is having to deal with the fact that what happens when progressives get in charge? What happens when the progressives get in charge of the judicial system? They go and they lash out against their political opponents. They punish people for not being progressives and Democrats. They go out and they abuse their power the very first second they get. They don't let people resign. They don't give them an ultimatum or a choice. They actively turn around and just start firing people. They just start punishing people. How dare you not be a Democrat when Democrats have power and you are punished? Doesn't matter if you're doing your job well. They fired a gentleman named Randy Kostnick. Mr. Kostnick has been doing his job for 6 years. No one has said that he didn't do his job right. No one says that there is a problem with the job he has done. Neither Republicans nor Democrats. The Democrats can't even, when they have been asked, why did you do this? When the Democrats in Wisconsin were asked, why did you fire someone? It looks like it's political, that there's no other reason other than that guy's a Republican and you fired him because he's a Republican. Do you have a reason? Any reason at all? Did he fail his job? Is he a bad person? Is there any reason? Their answer is we refuse. They didn't want to speak. Zero comment. No comment. I mean, of course, the Republicans are upset and they're like, I don't believe this. You're abusing your power. The second you got power, you started abusing your power and punishing people because of their politics, which is an abuse of power. This should be in the courts right now. This should be a big deal. It's not because the Chief Justice, who happens to be a Republican, she's afraid of retaliation. Seriously, it's in the article. She's afraid of retaliation. Where is it? Give me a second, I'll find it for you. Here it is. So Ziegler said the move undermined her authority as Chief Justice. She called it unauthorized, procedurally and legally flawed, and reckless. But she said she would not attempt to stop it out of fear that other court employees could be similarly fired. So when Democrats abuse the system, abuse their power, overreach, and punish people for being Republicans, the answer from the Republican Party, rather than having a lawsuit, rather than doing something about it, is to say, okay, let it happen. She made a complaint. She complained to the Middletown Press. She's upset and won't do anything to stop it. This is the problem with our government right now. And Jan, I'm going to get to your comment in 1 second. But this is the problem we have in America right now, folks. When we have politicians who are saying, I know there's a problem. I have proof of a problem. I can show in detail the problem. But I won't do anything. You are the problem. Ziegler, Chief Justice Ziegler, Annette Ziegler, you are the problem in Wisconsin. It doesn't matter if the Democrats, because they have power, are on a rampage and want to fire every single conservative and Republican in the state of Wisconsin. Doesn't matter. The right thing to do is to stand up for the people of Wisconsin and to address the problem. The Democrats, the progressives, are not getting better because you let them abuse power. That's not the lesson. Do we not learn anything? This is the same approach that Biden has used overseas. This is the approach we have with Iran. That didn't work. It's the approach we have with China. That's not working. It's the same approach we have with Russia. That's not working. This is not the answer. This is one of our fundamental problems. Okay, so let me get to the comments. And so I see Jan commented that, what is that? 100,000 million. So $262 billion in deposit exits for JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citigroup in 1 year as government reveals collapse of another U.S. bank. Oh, another bank's collapsing. Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. Yeah, so there's another bank that's falling apart. Well, that's Bidenomics for you. Of course, another bank's falling apart. Because Bidenomics, it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful because inflation is so high and banks are failing. And you should be happy. That's what Joe Biden has said. You should be happy about Bidenomics. You should re-elect him because of Bidenomics, because it's so great. We've had, 3, 4 major banks fail. Because inflation is high and going to remain high because jobs are slowing down. People are being hired less and unemployment is increasing. And I know someone is going to watch the program and go, but Mike, see, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Unemployment isn't up, it's down. Well, no. The trend is actually unemployment is increasing. And more importantly, when you look at the numbers, be very careful what you're looking at, because the number of people who don't count increased. Every time you have seen under the Biden administration, every time that you have seen the unemployment rate drop, you've also seen the number of people they don't count as being unemployed increase. Gee, what a shocking thing that we have 100,000 less people who are unemployed, but we have 100,000 more people that we don't count as unemployed. Do you think they're playing with the numbers? So when I say that Bidenomics has failed, I mean it's failing at every aspect. The banks are failing. They're falling apart. They're closing down. The economy's in a bad shape. We are in a recession. I know. News media wants you to believe we have a soft landing. We're going to avoid a recession. Yeah, go to your bank account. Tell me if you have a recession or not. Go to your savings account. Go to your IRA and tell me we're not in a recession. We are in a recession. It's a global recession, and the United States is in a recession. And the only reason why they won't tell you that is because you might vote different in 2024. So they can't use the recession word. So going back to comments here. User has been banned says that Illinois passed a bill allowing illegals to become police officers. Yes, I saw that. And first of all, how can you have someone... This is how stupid this is. So Illinois is going to employ people who they can't employ. First of all, illegal aliens cannot get a job in the United States because they're criminals. They are illegal. Sorry, there's some background noise. Sorry, we get background noise. It's New York City. So the first problem with Illinois and the illegal aliens, and the reason why I didn't talk about it, it is stupid and it is nonsensical on its face. It doesn't make any sense. You have someone who is there to enforce the law, who is, by their existence, a violation of the law. They are illegal aliens. They are criminals. The very first thing they should do as soon as they get sworn in is arrest themselves and their families. But yet, in Illinois, they're saying, no, you don't have to follow this law. Follow the other laws. Enforce the other laws. Does this make any sense? So you're telling these illegal aliens that the law is arbitrary. It's like being in California and having a sanctuary state. The law is arbitrary. We only follow certain laws sometimes. That's what they're saying. Sometimes the law matters. Sometimes it's important. Sometimes it should be enforced. That's not called law. That's called anarchy. Illinois is out of its mind. Let me go back to some of the comments here. And I'm keeping up on the comments. I'm trying to keep up, folks. Hang on. It's a little hard for me to read it, so please bear with me. Jan asked me, have I talked about the illegal Chinese lab in California that was making the pandemic and using rats? I know that's under investigation. The source, I heard about this, that there is a supposed lab, an illegal lab, that was being run to manipulate various viruses with rats. The source I saw, and I didn't see any credible news sources that I know of as being credible, and so that's why I haven't brought it up. I am familiar with the story. I think it could be interesting to follow up on, but I don't have confirmation that this was Chinese owned and that was done in the United States by a credible news source. That's why I haven't brought it up. But that's based on the research I did. If you know of another internationally credible source that confirms that, I'll be happy to talk about it. Let's see. User has been banned is bringing up HB3751. Here goes, user has been banned says, well, to correct me about the illegal aliens in Illinois, saying that this is about non-citizens. See, to me, that doesn't make any difference. And let me see if I can bring this up. Bear with me. I want to bring up the bill so that we can talk about it. Here it is. So, just so everyone can see what we're talking about here. This is the bill. This is Bill HB 3751 from the 103rd Assembly for Illinois. And synopsis, amends the Illinois Municipal Code, provides that an individual who is not a citizen but is legally authorized to work in the United States, that's fungible. There's questions on that. Under federal law and is authorized to apply for the position of a police officer subject to all requirements and limitations other than citizenship. Well, here's the problem. We see in many states that, like New York State, illegal aliens are allowed to work in New York State and California, in several states, even though they are criminals. So to say that this is someone who is legally authorized, no, they're not legally authorized. That doesn't stop them from working. So that's one of the problems. You can be an illegal alien, which is a non-citizen, and to be there. This goes on to say, so if you are in America, and let's assume that you're not an illegal alien, and say that you're in Illinois and you're a non-citizen. Well, that means one of three things. You're either a non-citizen because you're a student on a student visa, you're on a work visa, or you have a green card in the United States. So if you're legal and you can work in the United States, you're authorized to be in the United States, you either have a green card, a student visa, or a work visa. And these are the people that Illinois wants to be a cop. Now, is that a step up from illegal immigrants? Absolutely. Is that what we want? No. Because how do we know they know the law? How do we know how they're going to enforce the law? See, many of these people are coming from countries that don't have the freedoms that we have. Okay, you can be a cop. I can be a fireman. I also happen to be 55. I weigh 150 pounds. I smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. I'd be the worst fireman possible, other than some women who want to be firemen who happen to be shorter, fatter, and less healthy than me. They'd be worse. So, no, I don't get to be a fireman just because I want to. even though I could fit the requirements, but I don't fit the details. The same thing applies here, in my opinion. Now, there are people who say, Mike, you just don't understand. No, I understand. I don't agree. There's a difference. I do not believe that non-citizens should be trying to control citizens through the law. I know every libertarian I'm aware of hates this idea. They don't like the police as is. And now you're going to get people who are strangers to enforce laws that don't even participate in those laws. They're not neutral. This isn't positive. So, all right. Let me catch back up. This is my belief. I see your comment, happy life. Give me 1 second. I just want to make sure I catch up. Okay. Happy life. It's good to have you, happy life. Good to see you here. Happy life asks, what's your opinion of all the new UFO, UAF news? Nothing new. So to answer happy life, and for those who are wondering, UFOs, not new. We had the same kind of revelation about UFOs. It was called Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was something that happened in the 1970s. I remember it. We even had a TV show about Project Blue Book and learning about these UFOs back in the 70s and 80s. Not new. Not a surprise. Not important. That is a distraction. The reason why they're releasing more and they're talking more about it, about things that we've already talked about and we've already known about, is that it's going to distract people from the things we have been talking about, which is the preparation for World War III or a second regional war with China, talking about the economy, talking about Biden lying to the American people and getting caught multiple times. That's why they're doing it. So, no, it's not new. And it doesn't impress me. The follow-up question that someone may ask is, Mike, do you believe in UFOs? Yes, because I think it would be arrogant to say that human beings are the only living intelligent creatures in the universe. The universe is billions of years old. It is infinite in its space. And we are saying that the only intelligent life in the entire universe is on this planet and we're it. That sounds arrogant. No, I think there's life in the universe. That life may or may not visit the United States or, the world, and probably is doing so through drones. Just like we use drones to see what's going on in other parts of the world, they're using drones to see what's happening on this planet. That's what I think is happening. So yes, do I think UFOs exist? Yes. Do I think the government knew about it? Absolutely. Did they tell us about it? No. Why? Because people will lose their minds. People will commit suicide and go on holy rampages. It'll be horrible. So it's all meant as a distraction. Jan mentions the Fresno lab, the Fresno B, as the new source. I didn't see that one before, but okay. Let's see. User has been banned says this could allow those. Well, yes. That's, again, see, going back to another example, and this is being brought up by user has been banned, another way to see where's the problem. We know that there are six Chinese police stations in America at this moment. That's fact. We know that. We were one of the first ones in October of 2022 to report on the fact that there were illegal Chinese police stations operating in New York City. There were 2 of them. And we actually had one of our callers call in, one of the audience members called in and told the exact address, the floor, the door, the exact address of one of those Chinese police stations. So what Illinois is doing is saying that if you are a member of the Chinese Communist Party and you go to Illinois, you go over and you apply, you can be a legitimate legal police officer enforcing Chinese law on U.S. soil. That's dangerous. Talk about abusing power. Talk about enforcing authoritarian rule. It is insane. And the law does, and the way they wrote this law, it does not stop that. It's a bad law. This is for a bunch of Democrats who talk about being progressive and saving people and defunding the police. They seem really hyper about making sure that the police they do have are authoritarian dictatorships. It's horrendous. And so I see that users banned says the off-world craft is that Russian satellite they sent up with a dog, which is the non-human biologic. I'm not sure what that means, user. I'm assuming you're talking about UFOs, but I'm not sure exactly how. Yeah, and Jan, yes, it's illegals that are arresting Americans. It's foreign governments using their agents to arrest American citizens, to abuse. And what about the abuse of power? Do you mean that if a Chinese Communist Party operative joins the police in Illinois and they're running around, that they wouldn't use that to influence people with the Chinese Communist Party? It is, there are so many levels of danger in this and how it can be so easily abused. It's ridiculous. I don't see a reason why we would want to do this. But again, you're not supposed to think about it. You're not supposed to have this conversation. You're supposed to say, illegals, good, yay, and stop right there. Because the Progressive Party said, illegals are good, so don't talk in it. You don't have anything to talk about. Just say yes. Just say yes. No one's asking about, wait a minute, but Illinois was just in the middle of trying to defund the police. Did they think we forgot this? They were trying to get rid of American police officers. They were trying to defund them. And now, 6 months later, they're now saying, oh no, it's okay to have police. We just need police who aren't American to enforce American law. Wait a minute, there's a problem. If you didn't want Americans to enforce the American law, why do you want some stranger to do it? See, that's an interesting aspect. It's a question that the news media doesn't want you to ask. NBC will never ask this question. CBS, CNN, New York Times, they're never going to ask this question. And the question is very important. And some reporter should ask this and try and get an answer. Illinois was trying to defund the police, actively trying to reduce the number of police. They are now saying it's okay to have police as long as they're not American. What the hell happened here? What's changed? Why is it good to have foreigners as police and not Americans as police? There's a problem here. It's underlying, and in part, I think it's so that they can have people like Chinese or perhaps Muslims to come over from other countries and to enforce their laws in the United States, not the law of the United States. I truly believe that. Oh, so now we're jumping back and forth between talking about Illinois and illegal aliens and the UFO thing. And user has been banned in talking about UFOs is mentioning that there was a guy who testified that they found a crashed off-world vehicle with non-human beings. Yeah, that could have been a Soviet one of the Soviet animals, dog, a monkey, that was sent up as a satellite and crashed back to Earth. Yeah, that's quite possible. And they're playing with the language on that because it's off-world. Well, yeah, a satellite is off-world. And it's a non-human being. Yeah, because a dog and a monkey aren't humans. True. Again, the whole thing about UFOs, as it's being presented now, is a distraction. It's like the flat earthers. They're a distraction. These are things that are supposed to keep you busy. The Barbie movie is a distraction. Mind you, there are inherent problems with the Barbie movie, just like there are inherent problems in The Witcher Origins, or She-Hulk, or Secret Invasion, or Ant-Man and Ant-Man 3. There are all these problems. Yes, there are issues with each of them, but these are lesser issues. They're meant to distract you. The bigger issue, Joe Biden has been caught lying again. That should be a big deal. That's not a big deal because the newspapers want Joe Biden to win in 2024. And so you can't talk about the fact that he has been caught lying multiple times, that he has been lying to the American people for at least a decade, based on his own evidence, the evidence of letters that he wrote to Hunter Biden's business partner, talking about how he was involved in the business that Hunter Biden was doing. That's 2011. That's more than a decade. Not counting the money that he received or any of the 20 phone calls that he was involved with in business meetings that he was either on a speakerphone or in person at luncheon to be involved with. That's business interactions. He lied to the American people. He lied to him, but then again, I'm not surprised by this. This is the same man who was laughing around the world and letting the world see him laugh as he was admitting that he was blackmailing the Ukrainian government. This is the same man who lied to the American people, looking them dead in the eye as he abandoned 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan. He's the same guy who's never blinked an eye as he told Lester Holt on national NBC News, February of 2022, that he was going to abandon 10,000 Americans, including children. And he finally got smart, and instead of him saying it, he let the State Department tell us that the American government just abandoned 15,000 Americans into Sudan. I will never stop talking about that. It is important. I don't care about the UFOs. Joe Biden's lying to us to the detriment of America. He is hurting us. And the news media wants you to ignore that. They will tell you anything and everything else so you don't pay attention to that, so you will vote Democrat. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't vote Democrat. That's on you. That's your choice. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican. I have a very different viewpoint. But if you want to vote Democrat, fantastic. Don't tell me it's because Joe Biden is honest. He's not. Don't tell me it's because Joe Biden's doing the best thing he can for America. Because he's not. It's demonstrable. I've already shown it on this episode and many others. That's a lie. So you better have another reason, and I hope it's a good one. But those aren't the reasons. He's not helping America with our credit rating. Notice the only two times that America's credit rating went down, under Obama with Biden as vice president, and now with Biden in the White House. This is the second time. Happened in 12 years. Gee, why did we lose our... And I did a story. I just did a video on this. Why did our credit rating go down under Obama? Because we're spending too much money. And we waste too much time fighting over how much money we're spending. Because we kept expanding. The debt ceiling never stops increasing. And we keep arguing about it right up to the last second. And then we push it forward. As if we're not going to do it. As if the government's not going to continue to increase the debt ceiling. No, that's going to continue to happen. Republicans or Democrats in charge. We're just going to try and save face, look like we're doing our job. The politicians are going to look like they're actually trying to help the people as they argue about this. and never fix the underlying problem. Yeah, we got downgraded. We deserved it. We deserved it under Obama. We deserve it now. S&P got it right. The only one who hasn't done it, and by the way, when Moody's, the last one that's left on the list, when Moody's downgrades America, so all three major credit ratings companies will downgrade America, you will see a massive shift. That is going to be a big deal. Again, it's like the food crisis. Most Americans go, what food crisis? While people are starving around the world, especially in Africa. People are going to go, well, we got downgraded. Who cares? Except you're going to slowly see that the cost of business, raw goods, manufacturing, importing goods, that's all going to increase. The cost of everything is going to slowly start increasing. And when Moody's downgrades the America again, you're going to see yet another increase. And the debt is going to increase faster, which means we're going to need to print more money or borrow more money, which means more inflation. At the end of the day, the easiest way to explain this is, as America's credit rating goes down, inflation goes up. Poor people get more poor. I can't make it simpler than that. I really can't. So if it didn't make sense to you before, perhaps that makes sense to you now. And that's upsetting. The credit rating's important, and it isn't being talked about. It has been mostly ignored, and the news media doesn't want to deal with this because it flies in the face of Bidenomics. In fact, where was it? I think I have that story. I think I have this. Come on. My computer's acting up. Bear with me, folks. Because my computer, there it is. All right, there we go. Come on. Whoa, come on, computer. My computer's acting up. Bear with me. Bear with me, folks. There we go. So, where is it? There it is. I knew I had another story to talk with. Come on, there it is. So, here it is. Currently, the White House is blaming Republicans because the United States got downgraded. Because, as always, the problem has to be Trump. The Biden-Harris campaign, they're blaming Trump. This is 2023. President Trump hasn't been in office. January 2021, he was in office. This is the Biden economy. These are Biden's economic policies. Has nothing to do with Trump. We had 4 years of Trump, 3.5, and guess what? We didn't get downgraded under Trump. We got downgraded under Biden. You can't make that up. But yet NBC is trying to lie to your face. They are trying to blame this on someone else who's not in charge. The Republicans aren't in charge. The Republicans didn't pass the policies. It was the Democrats that did. I love this article. If you read this from NBC, they actively avoid actually telling you what Fitch, what they said in the downgrade. They literally don't quote them. They do not want to tell you the truth. They're telling you their opinion. Well, it has to be because of Trump. Trump is such a bad guy. The economy's bad because of Trump. We're in 2023. Trump hasn't been in power. He didn't pass any economic policy. He didn't pass any laws. This is Biden. How can you tell me it's Trump? He's not in charge. Unless you're telling me that all the Democrats in elected office at this moment are useless and President Trump is so powerful that he still has power after he walked away from the presidency. Does that make sense to anyone? But they have to say this because Bidenomics must be good. Biden must be good. He must be accurate. He must be helping you because if he isn't, you won't vote for him, and they lose power. And this is why they're lying to your face. They are lying to your face. And I'm only trying to point out the obvious truth. Hey, Lynn. Lynn mentions that Biden equals the worst president. You are correct, Lynn. He is beyond the worst president. It's ridiculous. And we're going over thinking, and I'm telling you folks, get ready for 3 regional wars. There is a reason, as we just discussed earlier, why the Marines, the Navy, and the Air Force are making the biggest show of force in the history of the world, and why Russia and China are ignoring it, why they don't care. They do not care, as you can see with what happened in Alaska, as you can hear from senators from Alaska, Democrat and Republican. The fact is, they don't care. Because, yes, it's like saying I could have an M16 right now. It could be just off this side of the camera, and you would never know. And it doesn't matter, because it doesn't do anything. It could be sitting on a shelf, and it'll never make a difference until the moment I use it. Same thing with what's happening here. We have a Marine Corps. Are we using it? No. What about our Navy? No. Our Air Force? No. Our Army? No. In fact, we're allowing them to shrink. We're allowing them to wither because we're not using them. And when we do use them, we're using them inappropriately. What are the Marines doing right now? They're down at the border of the United States helping pass out paperwork for illegal aliens to break the law. That's not what Marines do. Let's be very clear here. That's not what Marines are for. So let me see here. The Happy Life says, give me 1 second. I'm trying to read this. Happy Life says, what's your 2024 presidential prediction? My prediction? It's Trump versus Biden. It's pretty straightforward. It'll be an election between Trump and Biden, and I'd like to see Joe Biden lose. Will he lose? Well, it depends on how much they fortify the election again. Again, we know they did this. We saw it in Newsweek. They were very proud to tell us after the election in 2020 that they were fortifying the election. Now, they called it fortifying the election. I might use a different term. I'm restricted to only being able to say election irregularities because of social media. They will turn my channel off and shut me down and delete everything I've done for the last 17 years if I happen to mention more. That's the threat they have against me. So what I would say is, if there aren't more election irregularities, if the major media companies don't fortify the election like they did in 2020, that they admitted to on Newsweek, then I would expect Joe Biden to lose. That's my expectations. That's the prediction today. And it looks like Vivek Ramaswamy is winning the race to be the vice president under Trump. I initially thought that would either go to Nikki Haley or Tim Scott. The reason being, not only because, and all of them are qualified, but I think Tim Scott is the best choice. He's a senator, he's black, he's intelligent, he's well-spoken. When I say well-spoken, I mean in being able to convey the issues and the ideas. He's consistent in his belief systems. So that's important to me. I thought it would be Tim Scott. He also has been raising a ton of money. Nikki Haley, not only is she qualified, but also she's a woman. So these are the color of skin, the gender. It's important in presidential politics. But Vivek Ramaswamy, who happens to be a minority, Fantastic for him. I don't care. But he's a smart man. He's young. He's energetic. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He's not really rich. Not rich enough for an election like this. I didn't think he would do it, but he has been moving up. He still has a long way to go. We know the one person we know who won't be vice president is Ron DeSantis. So if we were to look at it today, then you'd have to say Vivek Ramaswamy would be the vice president under Trump. But I believe ultimately it will be Tim Scott who will be vice president to a President Trump. And unless there is more fortification of the election, they'll win. So I hope that answers your question, Happy Life. Let me go on. Lynn says, all packages for goods shrinking and pricing increasing. Yeah. You're right, Lynn. See, the inflation today is really insidious because I'm glad that you brought this up, Lynn. I don't get to mention it much because there are some people who say, but I don't see the inflation. Mike, I don't see it. Now, if you happen to be in bigger cities like New York City or other cities, you know that when you go out, that $100 that you would spend on groceries, you're walking back. You might have needed 2 bags to carry all that. And today you can put it in a backpack and have room left over. That's a fact. It's not even a question. That's a fact. So if you don't count that as inflation, the other thing that we saw, and we saw this under the Obama administration a lot, is that the serving size of a package, smaller and smaller. The price didn't change. The size of the food, the size of the packaging of the goods shrank down. So what used to be a 24-ounce container became a 20-ounce container. A package of meat that was 1.5 pounds became a pound of meat. They kept the price exactly the same. They just shrank it a little bit. Look at your bag of chips. The price of a bag of chips since 2008 to today, the price didn't change. The size of the bag did, though. And that's inflation. That is when they are being really, really evil and deceptive about inflation. They just shrink everything. They make it smaller, but keep the price the same. And then they tell you, oh, no, it's all okay. Bidenomics, it's perfectly fine. This bag of chips still costs $2. There's no inflation. The bag of chips was $2 in 2008. It's $2 in 2023. Yeah, except in 2008, I could get a 32-ounce bag of chips, and today I'm getting less than an 8-ounce bag of chips for the same price. That's inflation. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, Lynn, that is important. It is scary. And when we have a generation of people, especially after the lockdowns, there are so many people who no longer cook for themselves. They just call up. They go to Uber or Uber Eats, or I know there's other delivery services. I don't know the names. I don't use any of them. But I know a lot of younger people, they don't cook. They just order the food. It gets delivered. So they don't see what's the cost of each individual item. They're not seeing the cost of things go up because they don't buy them. So they don't realize the inflation is there. But if you're cooking your own food, you'll notice it in a heartbeat that the size of the packages of food have decreased, the price has remained the same or increased. That's inflation. User has been banned says, I saw progressives calling Ron DeNazi. I told them that it doesn't mean what you think it means. And then they came back with demeaning is. And then I said, so when we... Yeah, okay, so people are just attacking DeSantis right now. And they want to call him everything evil. But you know what? Think about it. It doesn't matter. The progressives out there, the Democrats out there, they were going to demonize any and every Republican. They may be focused on Trump most of the time. I guarantee you, if Tim Scott were to get the nod for being a Republican candidate for president, you would hear the same thing they did to Larry Elder. You would see that the LA Times would say that Tim Scott is the blackface of white nationalism. You would see them say that he is an Uncle Tom even more than they already do. That they would be calling him every kind of racist ism in the book. It doesn't matter. Nikki Haley would be called a sexist. Doesn't matter. They're going to attack us not because of the inherent issues, like we're wrong or that they have evidence, just because Larry Sharpe, I was talking to Larry on Friday on the Liberty First Foundation, and Larry had, it was a running joke in the conversation, but character assassination. The left, the answer to the left is character assassination. They don't have anything to dispute the evidence that is out there. They distract from it. And if you still notice it, even after talking, UFO, look, there's a UFO. Talk about Lizzo. Talk about the Barbie movie. Distraction, distraction, distraction. Oh, you're still paying attention? You still read that article? You actually looked at the price of food today? Oh, okay, well, that's just because you're evil. You're just an evilist and phobe. And now comes the character assassination. They try and destroy you rather than deal with the issue because they can't say Bidenomics worked. It doesn't. It's not real. There's no evidence to point to say Bidenomics is working. There is none. Banks are closing. They weren't before. They are now. Inflation is up. It wasn't before. It is now. The size of packages of foods are shrinking. They were shrinking under Obama. They're continuing to shrink now. There is no benefit. It's kind of amazing. So give me a second. Jan's got a couple of comments here. The Fed came out and said they're not done raising interest rates. No kidding. I said that for a while. Interest rates are at a 40-plus year high. They're going to go higher. The average interest rates, the average over 100 years is 6.25%. Interest rates are going to go back up. They're going to go closer to 6.25%. That's my expectation. That is based on the historical average of over 100 years of what the average interest rate is. It's 6.25%. We're going to see interest rates go to a 6.25%. So it's another roughly 1 point increase from where we are today. If you haven't factored that into your retirement, now that's your warning. And user as banned mentions this is worse than the Carter administration. Yes, that's because Carter administration was a stagflation. This is a recession. And unlike the Great Recession under the Obama administration, which is just, again, marketing. It was just stupid. This is going to be long-lasting and devastating because it has hit the essentials. Unlike every other recession that America has gone through previously, America was a manufacturing country. And therefore, we could still build essential items. We no longer do that. We no longer are manufacturing, and we no longer are energy independent. Therefore, we are fighting and competing with the rest of the world for the finished goods and the resources that we need, which is inherently going to increase the cost because there's more demand. At the same time, we are spending like drunken sailors at a level never before imagined. We spend more money, we waste more money, we have a higher deficit than any generation previous. You put those two things together and you have an economy that is cratering. And then add in a lack of leadership and you have global instability, and this is how you start wars. truly believe it. How long have we, wow. It's only 6 o'clock. Well, we've been on for, I don't know, 3 hours and something. By the way, I can't see. I can't see the time. And my screens are way further away in the new studio setup. I've got two of my screens and they're far away. So it's very difficult for me to read everything. So if you see me like squinting and moving, it's because I can't see. I can't see the screen. So I'm trying to do my best. And again, I want to thank everyone for putting up with the fact, and I know that you're not able to call in today to 607-242-9247. Our phone lines are down. Everything costs money. Moving costs money. Moving the studio, losing the house, it costs money. And so we can't have the phone, our phones are down. As soon as we are able to have the money, we'll get our phones back up and we'll have being able to have calls coming in. Until then, we can't do that. But that doesn't stop us from having the conversation and enjoying the comments that are being typed and responding to you. We're still going to do this every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. We're going to do this as best as we can every week. Now, we do appreciate that if you can, we do ask, hey, help us. Like, share, subscribe. Seriously, it's one of the best things you could possibly do. To help us beat the algorithms, to fight against the suppression and the censorship that has been happening to this channel for well over a decade, because they don't want us to talk. They want us to obey. So fight against that. Like, share, subscribe. Maybe you found this to be entertaining, educational. Maybe your friends will find it entertaining or educational, informative. Like, share, and subscribe so more people are able to see it, and we can have better conversations. And if you really want to, it's up to you, because it helps. You can subscribe to our Patreon. It's $1.50 a month. We do about 30 hours of content per month. That's in the live streams and videos that we put out throughout the week. And of course, the J-Rest break, which are our short videos that are done by John. You saw earlier commenting. John does the J-Rest break and tries to hit all the subjects that I don't talk about. And so we provide all that content. It costs you nothing. If you decided to join our Patreon, it's $1.50 a month. You'll watch our channel, and probably already do, more than Hulu or Netflix or Peacock or what's the other one, Paramount. You're not watching all that streaming. You're paying for it. You're not watching all that. It's $1.50. We think you'll get a good trade-off for your money. It's not even a cup of coffee. 1 cup of coffee a month is more expensive than supporting us on Patreon. So I think it's a pretty good deal. And if you don't want to do Patreon, $1.50 every month, you can, of course, make a one-time donation through PayPal. And again, all of it helps us to pay our bills, because obviously I need to pay bills. That being said, I don't know, it's been quite the show today. We've been talking about World War III. We've been talking about what's going to happen going forward. What's going to be affecting America in 2027, 2028. We've talked a little bit about UFOs. We've been talking about the economy. We've been talking about the international politics. We've talked about borders and why they're so important. What Poland is showing us, how Europe is reacting to that, how Italy is reacting to that, and how should the Americans be reacting to that. We talked about a lot of this. And I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Hang on one second. I want to see. Excuse me 1 second. 3.5 hours. That's how long we've been on. We've been on for 3.5 hours. While we're still getting our studio set up and everything's getting put together, and since we aren't able to take phone calls today, it's a little bit shorter than normal. I'm not going to go 5 hours. I think we've covered a lot, and there's a lot to digest and what we've said. We're going to end it here today. And we're going to put in the links in the description so that everyone is able to see that. I hope I was able to, before I go, I want to make sure. Happy Life, did I answer your questions? Everyone that asked me a direct question, I think I've answered every question that was asked on the program about me, about UFOs and the economy in 2024. I'm happy to answer the questions. I think I've answered everyone clearly with my thoughts. Did I do that? Did I miss a question out there? I don't think I did. But, I like to be fair and honest and complete with my audience and make sure that I am staying on top of your questions because you matter. You're the reason why I'm here every week. Nope, no one seems to think I missed anything, so that's good. So then we're going to end right now. I look forward to seeing you throughout the week. And, of course, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, if this is the first time that you've been here, thank you for joining us this long. If you are part of my regular audience, I love you. Thank you. And we're still working on the New York studio. It will improve over time until I have to move again. So we'll make this work out. Don't worry. Never fear. The voice of the political dragon will not be silenced. I thank you, everyone. I want you to be well. Talk to you soon.